Good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Housing and Economic Development Committee. I'm James Torrance, Chair of the committee and representative of the council, the city's 7th Council District. I'm joined today by committee members, Vice Chair Odette Ramos of the 14th District.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilman Jermaine Jones of the 12th District.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilman Zach Blanchard of the 11th District.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Also, we have representatives from the Mayor's Office and Council President's Office here. Committee staff is Julianne Jamat, sorry. Just want to make sure. Never pronounce the name wrong. Today, the committee is meeting to discuss LO 250028, acquisition strategy and interim filings, LO 250030, financing for vacant and abandoned properties, LO 250033, tax over reform and vacancy prevention. Well, we will begin with LO 250028, acquisition strategy and interim for the purpose of calling relevant city agencies and representatives, as well as third-party stakeholders to review and discuss the city's policies around the implementation of the city's strategy to acquire vacant property and conduct interim filings. Opening remarks by the chair will not occur, nor the council president. We will now go over to the agency to present to streamline things this evening. Commissioner?
Welcome to your first hearing.
Mr. Chair, is it appropriate if I say a few words?
Yes.
Just to acknowledge, my name is Tim Keene. I started in DHCD as acting commissioner in March. Therefore, this is my first hearing, here to support the staff that are here to present to you and participate in the discussion with council to the degree it's helpful, answer questions, or give my perspective where I can. So thank you for having me and us. And on the first presentation for item number 1 tonight, we have Tamara Woods and Joe Kirshner from the Development Division of DHCD who will take us through that presentation.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and committee members. So we're going to walk through the agenda really briefly and just go through some of the updates on where we are with acquisition status. We're going to also walk through the legal section, land management team's acquisition targets, and then we're going to respond to some questions raised at the last hearing around NREM targets, and then just how we keep residents informed. And next slide. Begin. So where are we since October? The last hearing was October of 2025. And since that time on November 5th, the city of Baltimore has signed and BOE has executed the BVRI MOU between the state of Maryland, city of Baltimore, and the Maryland Stadium Authority. The eligible activities within the MOU are acquisition, demolition, deconstruction, stabilization, site development, and renovation. Our primary activities that we are working on as an agency center around acquisition, demolition, and stabilization, with some thoughts around renovation and site development. In addition to that, in order to help build capacity and streamline efficiency, the Development Division is having on actually May 6th, I got the update just this morning, May 6, 2026 BOE agenda, a cooperative contract to bring in appraisers and abstractors. The cooperative contract is actually for $225,000 each. We've already started having vendor profiles being set up by the appraisers. As of last week, we have 2 additional vendor profiles for the appraisers. We do expect in the coming weeks that we will have the remainder set up. Once it's approved at BOE, then we can actually get to work immediately following the 6th. In addition to that, we're going to walk through each of our teams on how we're reimagining workflow and staff assignments for acquisition and disposition underway. I know this is the acquisition hearing, but you really have to think through both from a staffing perspective to make sure that we can get the efficiencies correct. And in addition to that, we're currently organizing the BVRI acquisition for release with the state.
I guess this is me. Good afternoon. My name is Joe Kirshner. I'm the Assistant Commissioner for the Development Division Legal Section, and this is just a brief snapshot of where we are right now with NREM activity. At this point, prior hearings, we talked about we were building. I feel like we're still building and gaining momentum, but it's really underway at this point. So currently we have 13 filing litigation attorneys doing this in-rem work, we have figured out that basically a 2-to-1 ratio with title attorneys is where we need to be. So we have 5 title attorneys. We have 2 offers out for additional title attorneys. And then we have 11 paralegals, and a 12th has been extended an offer. This is basically a snapshot of, as of about 2 weeks ago, we had filed 1,175 cases. I just checked today, it's 1,191 at this point. We had 818 titles that had been awarded. And for the whole time, it's averaging 171 days from filing to judgment. I checked again, it's 836 judgments now. And in the past 6 months, that time has come down. So not a ton, but it's 161 days between filing and judgment. We still have, over 350 cases in court, and we're just constantly keeping the pipeline full of cases. So we have almost 800 cases that are under preparation. And then kind of just looking big picture, after you take out these numbers, there still are 2,164 vacant buildings that are currently eligible for in-rem foreclosure and 3,332 vacant lots. Getting to some of the efficiencies we're trying to achieve. Recently in the General Assembly, we introduced a bill that would eliminate a mailing that we determined is unnecessary. And it's unnecessary for the city in particular because the city council adopted this robust service requirement. So there is a 5-day post-filing mailing requirement, but given all the service that's required in the city code, we determined that it was just extra mailing. And sometimes we have 10 defendants and we're sending out, this 5-day post-filing mailing in 2 different ways to each of the defendants. So we figure with each case, we could eliminate, somewhere between 5 and 20 extra mailings, which I think our staff will appreciate. I mentioned that we were working on our staff ratios. It's just through trial and error when you're doing this much, filing this many cases and keeping them on track, just kind of figure out over time what the right staff ratio is. And we've determined we need more title attorneys. They're the ones who kind of prime the pump. We've got a kind of factory operation going at this point. So when the title work comes in, it gets refined and our defendants are identified through the title attorneys. So we have 2 coming on, and that'll make it 13 to 7, which I think would be a pretty ideal. And then we're doing other stuff like, when you're doing this many cases, we need things like additional printers. So we've added a high-capacity printer, and we have a new high-capacity copier on the way. And then I don't want to fail to mention that we're also looking at the mailing process and seeing if we can outsource that. So working with a consultant from the Mayor's Office of Vacancy Reduction on seeing if kind of what an outsourcing contract would look like and how we maintain control of our cases with mailing taking place outside the city.
Sure, and moving on to land management, where we do the negotiations and the condemnations. Negotiations and condemnations do include the ground rents as well as leasehold interest. So we have approximately the 750 that are underway. And you see under negotiation, the 434, that includes the state BVRI list, which right now is at 371. One of the things that I want to talk about, as they really do overlap in terms of staffing, I'm going to walk through really quickly. Land transactions and project development are our 2 teams that comprise 14 REOs, 2 directors that handle all acquisitions from the negotiation, which move to condemnation if need be, but all of the dispositions, same team members do both sides of the table. Relocation and donations, anything that we're acquiring that requires relocation, I have a team dedicated to that. And in the past, I'll say year and a half, we moved donations. And as you're aware, the mayor's office just ramped up our donations program. So they have taken that on as well and are really working to bring in and just streamline that process for that form of acquisition. And then we do have one current real estate opening right now. So let's talk about efficiencies. I think it's really important to understand and take note of when you have the same team members doing both things. What we are looking at doing is creating a dedicated team that is moving just the dispositions, and the remainder will tackle the acquisitions, because right now the acquisitions are far exceeding the dispositions. If you think back to 2024, when we started fixed pricing, it was actually the opposite. We needed more on dispositions than we needed on acquisitions, so we're flipping. And what that means for us from a team perspective is that we cross-train everybody. We have to make sure, even the new people that are coming in, that they learn both sides of the table. The other thing that we're doing in terms of efficiencies, and where we look at efficiencies not only from a human staffing standpoint, but from a software standpoint, from, just like Assistant Commissioner Kirshner, from an administrative standpoint. So what we were able to do last year is bring in a contract employee that is an appraiser. And she is actually undertaking, from a global perspective, organizing any appraisals that we need to order across the board for all state acquisitions, ordering the title work. So she is the one that's really spearheading that. And what that does is it allows us to move that responsibility from the 14 real estate officers. And we actually are able to track it in a different way. So one of the things that she's really been working on, we talked about the cooperative contract that's going to BOE. She's really been working with us in her contacts to, one, target where are the appraisers that are going to come on board, make sure that their credentials are what we need in terms of residential appraisers and commercial appraisers. So she's doing that piece of the work, and also working with them to understand what their capacity what their capacity is. Right now, the appraisers are letting us know their capacity is between 6 and 10 at a time. So when you do the math for what we are going to be at 30 to 40. The other thing that we are looking at traditionally, and I talk about where efficiencies can be gained. The other thing that we actually have the law department researching right now, traditionally we have gotten 2 appraisals per property, but really trying to determine if that is practice or if that is written in a policy. So far, what we've seen, that it's only 1 appraisal that's required, but we do want to make sure that we're in line with the needs if something moves to condemnation. So if there's something to be gained, that's actually very helpful if we only need 1 appraisal, because that cuts everything in half, right? So we're looking from that standpoint. And then come the real estate officers. What they will be doing once we've outsourced, I'll say outsourced to this employee appraiser that we have, they will be reviewing the title work once it comes in. And that actually cuts out a great deal, several weeks worth of work that otherwise the REO would have been doing. So they pick up at that stage. So we're really looking at every aspect of the work. As far as I know, this isn't the disposition hearing, but what that does is free up, the ability to go to the disposition and move that really quickly. And the goal is, once the dispositions are well underway, because they're being cross-trained, we can bring them back over to acquisitions where we need. And part of the acquisition, to understand, is these are not just scattered site. We might be doing site assembly. So in site assembly, you actually need to get fee simple title, leasehold, and ground rent. So effectively, it's actually 2 acquisitions per property if you're doing site assembly. So that too increases workload. So those are the types of efficiencies that we're actually looking at from not only a volume standpoint, but from a project standpoint. So acquisition targets, and these are, I'm just going to run through some of our considerations. It's not a linear projection of which one do we do first, second, third, or fourth, because as you just heard, our goal is really to tackle all of them. But we do have some considerations as we move through the work. The first thing, I know you all are well aware of block level planning, where we're identifying the strategies for any and all vacants in our target blocks. And so that may be acquisition, whether it's through NREM or through negotiation. It could be demolition, it could be stabilization, it could be receivership, or it could be nothing at all. It could be code enforcement. So once we're identifying that, we're using that to pull out. That's the first thing. Existing development projects and commitments. So that's low-hanging fruit. What do we actually need to have in our pipeline to finish what we've started? We have some projects, as you are well aware, that may have gone dormant during COVID and they're resurrecting. There may be some projects that we just have to finish that are large. So I can think of like a Cab Callaway, even though that's moved, but that's an example of a large volume that we needed to acquire. So that's low-hanging fruit. Neighborhood plans and strategies, that is pivotal. What has the community said they would like to see, and where are we moving? So that's another consideration. BVRI, you know, we have the initiative with the state, and part of that is really awarding directly to the CDOs where they've identified targets. Most of the acquisition targets are actually in REM targets and not negotiation. On the backside, they do have money coming to them for disposition. So that's something that's very critical because the CDOs are really approaching it holistically. They're not, you know, saying acquisition here and not thinking disposition. It's a holistic approach to that piece of redevelopment. In-rem foreclosures that are ad hoc requests from stakeholders, we get them every day. And we've gotten them every day for years. So we have to make sure that we're adding those into the pipeline where we can. And let's talk a little bit about acquisitions that leverage the market strength. One of the things that we do take into consideration is I'll say saturation and absorption. We have to take into consideration for scattered site, especially how much are we putting out? Because when you think about the work that developers are doing, if they're actually setting the market. And so if you have too many out, they may not be getting the highest value that they need. They may actually be deflating themselves. And the flip side of that is really how do you really bridge that gap? And so those are some of the things that we do consider when we're doing acquisition and its sister, which is disposition. The last acquisitions needed to complete an identified upcoming offering. So we talked about the low-hanging fruit for what exists, but what do we need for upcoming offerings? And that's really important and critical to understand from a project perspective. And that is not a linear, you know, equation as well. So when you understand, one, when does the offering need to go out, but when do you expect either to have an LDA? And it could be a delta for years in. So I'm looking at you, Councilwoman Ramos, and your favorite project in CHM is Tivoli. And that's a perfect example of a project where acquisitions were still underway, even though the developer was selected, or even though the offering was going out, the acquisitions started, you know, years prior. So that's an example of what we considered. And then there's scattered site acquisitions to support areas around large development sites. So we could look at Rutland, you know, Park, we could look at Cab Callaway, we can look at Parkview Rec Center, we can look at some of the surplus school sites. We can look at these large sites, and when we redevelop a large site, what do we need to do to support what's around it? So those are the scattered site acquisitions. So all of these things are really at play at the same time in determining when we can move and how we should move to make sure the outcome is where we need it to be.
Okay, and then just the last portion of this is a series of in-rem heat maps. This was requested at the October hearing. And I guess the key point to keep in mind is that city liens have to exceed the value, the assessed value of the property. And so assessed value is really going to affect whether properties are even in-rem eligible. And you know, and I've noticed actually that state SStat assessments have increased. I don't know if you've noticed the same thing. So we have actually noticed that there are vacant lots that we intended to acquire by in-rem foreclosure, and the reassessment has knocked them out, and we've got to come up with some other strategy for them. Oh, yes. I don't know how helpful this is, but by council district, it's broken down by total acquisitions and in-rem acquisitions. The heat maps might be more useful, or the raw numbers might be useful. It's a lot, and it's really small, but you know, this slide is available to review. So I didn't do any of these, that our data people did. So the dots, there are a lot of dots that are on top of other dots, so I think it helps to visualize patterns more than count the dots. So, these are the District 1 and District 2. There's some in-rim eligibility, but not a ton. District 3, District 4, there's some in Govans and Penn Lucie, I think, that we've been working on and that are still available. District 6, there's been quite a lot of in-rem, both eligibility and activity. Park Heights, Park Circle, mostly in support of a major redevelopment project. So Council District 7, this West North Avenue corridor, clearly there's been a lot of in-rem activity, along Coppin Heights, Parkview, places like that. District 8, there's not a ton. Some work in Edgewood and Allendale. And then District 9, of course, you can see all that activity and eligibility. Poppleton, Harlem Park, Franklin Square, places like that. We did have a big effort in Brooklyn Curtis Bay, and you can see all the properties we've acquired there, with some more eligible that we'll eventually get to. And then Council District 12, I guess, Johnson Square, Oliver, Barclay, Darley Park areas that kind of makes sense. We've done quite a bit of acquisition there through INREM. Berea and Milton Montfort have seen a lot of activity as well. And then, of course, Coldstream, Homestead, Montebello as well. There should be. Like I said, I would think so, but I didn't make the map. Just imagine there are a bunch of green dots in there.
There's a ton of green dots on
Yes.
Just imagine.
Yeah. Right. It should have a lot of green. So.
Right. Whoever did the map, I didn't use.
Yeah, I have a bone to pick with them.
Next slide. Sure, just to wrap up, how do we keep our residents informed? And this is something that you all know, and we just want to make sure it stays fresh, is the HCD has several ways that we keep everyone informed, whether they're a resident, a developer, nonprofit, through our website, obviously, social media, X, Facebook, Instagram, webinars and town halls and community conversations. And we have staff that's actually at a town hall taking place tonight. And we have the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, public meetings. There's one more slide. Sorry. Our external newsletter, direct mail, obviously we can be found. Our agency, direct postal mail pieces. This is something I did really actually want to highlight because it really speaks to, I will say, some of the legal notifications that we have as it relates not just to residents, but upcoming acquisition for the property owners. We actually have to do our HUD mailings. We have to do these things that are required. And that really kicks off the process and takes something that's an initiative and goes public. For notifications and things that Assistant Commissioner Kirshner's team has to do. So we have the legal aspect of the mailings as well if there's just any communication that we need to do. Printed educational materials, this is really huge. Something that I think is important to understand when we embark on an initiative for the number of acquisitions that we're doing, is really thinking through what is an FAQ, what are most asked questions, what do people need to know on a regular basis. One of the things that we do send out for our acquisitions for the negotiations is we send out the HUD brochure so that people know what their rights are, like they can come and be part of the appraisal, they can do these things. So we do seek to include that information for property owners. And renters, we have tenants that would be relocated for the few acquisitions were relocations, and we also have a YouTube channel. And with that, we can take any questions, so thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for the heat map. I have a question. Have we adapted our strategy to the state's assessment cycles? I think we know it's coming. We all know it's coming. And it's been a big issue because I've had 6 properties that were eligible. The assessment happened, the prices went up, and then now it is now not eligible. Are we reprioritizing as we anticipate properties to be assessed at a higher value?
So and you can speak to NREMS, which I know you alluded to, but for the negotiations, we're actually going through everyone and recalculating what a fair market value or an anticipated cost of acquisition would be based on the rise in assessments. So while we're not necessarily going on the same cycle in terms of prioritization, we are adjusting to what we know is a rise in assessment for the negotiation. So we have started that process, but we have not actually gone into a cycle with those.
All right, and then have we even looked at in creating a process with the state where we could appeal what the value is of their assessment? I know with property owners, you can say that, hey, you assess my property at this level, I have repairs I need to make, so the depreciation will be this number. Or the fact that we have a lot of vacant lots, the vacant lots actual estimated cost is way more than what the lot would actually be worth. Just as a way we create the flexibility in thinking forward with our state partners, especially around vacants, and how we can use that partnership strategically.
To my knowledge, we have not, but I can defer to Commissioner Keene or Deputy Mayor if you know from a citywide perspective if that's something that has been discussed. So we will get back to you on that.
Okay. I won't belabor all my questions right now, but I'll go to the vice chair next.
Thank you. Just need to put on the record and a committee request to redo this 14th district map. There should be lots of green in here because my district was the first that we did in REM because if I insisted on doing it, that we needed to experiment. And the 1600 block of Gorsuch is fully acquired, well, -2, from within REM. So that should be reflected in here. And I want to post it on my wall.
Yeah, I don't have
I know you all think I'm insane.
I think, just speculating, I think they probably cut off, they had a cutoff date. And since, I'm assuming.
Ours were the
since-
first. Well, that was my follow-up question, was whether or not this is all acquisitions from the beginning, which is November of '22. Well, that's when we first filed, so they were acquired in '23, or if this was a cutoff.
I don't know the answer to that, but I assume that they cut it off probably July 1st. I think some of the data was July 1st, 2023. I think by which time
We had acquired most of the block by then.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I still want to see my
Yeah, I
green
agree.
dots.
I agree.
But also that would be helpful for my colleagues to know because, as we look at data, we need to know if it's cumulative over the full time that we've been doing in REM, or we can starting to look at, now that we've got a rhythm, year by year, right? Because now we're getting some consistency after a couple of years doing this as well. So hopefully we can get that taken care of and a little more clarity for when this was. I would have thought that whoever was doing this would anticipate my question. So the other question I have a couple others. Do we know what the time frame is between the time that we decide to acquire this property through INREM to when it's filed? Because right now, in data that I had from October, we had 707 identified targets. Some of them are probably already through the process, but now we've got this data from, what's this, April. Let's see. What did we do? sorry, I'm just looking at, trying to find my chart here, here it is. 791 cases that are being prepared. I guess I'm just, what's that time frame between when we say we're starting to prep a case to when it's finally filed? It sounds like that's actually a pretty long period of time considering we have these backups.
Yeah, I think it is pretty long at this point. And I think that's a result of the capacity we had versus the targets we had identified.
Yeah.
So I don't think we've reached like a just-in-time product cycle yet.
Yeah,
And unfortunately, I don't have an answer for you right now, but we can probably go back and pull that. Like, I think it's starting to shorten from identification of a
Yeah.
target to filing. I think longitudinally, if we went back 2 years, it would be a very long time. I feel like things are getting a lot closer, but I don't have the data to tell you that. It should take, when we order the title work, I'm going to do this in my head, it takes a couple weeks to get the title work in. When we have enough title attorneys doing the title examination, it might be another couple weeks. And then that would then be assigned. Then we would do the 30-day pre-filing mailing. So it should be, I'm going to say, probably 4 or 5 months from the time we identify a target to the time it's in the hands of an attorney.
we're going to say 5 months to be conservative.
Yeah, but I bet right now it's cumulatively, it's a lot longer than that, but it is coming down because we're starting to catch up with our filing capacity to the targets we've identified.
Right. Well, I mean, I think we want to have what that ideal timeline would be because then we can make investments based on what we want to see. And I put in my budget request, which is the top thing that I asked for, which was more additional funding for more lawyers and requisite staff and support to be able to get that timeline down, but also to have more. Our goal has been to file 200 cases a month. We're maybe not even halfway there yet. So, I mean, I think that's what I'm trying to get at is we've got this. And then eventually as we, we'll figure out what happens later. But I just want to make sure that we're getting things through because people are excited about NREM. I mean, I keep talking about it. And, the court is doing their job. They're at, 170 days. Like, that's pretty good. That's really good.
I
That's
have
exactly
no
what we wanted. It's like a miracle. It's like lightning speed. People think that's crazy, but it is. And so I want to make sure that we're getting them the cases. And with the 2 people that we've invested in to have their capacity, they're able to get there. I'm sorry, Deputy Mayor.
No problem. Calvin Young, Deputy Mayor for Community and Economic Development. I think, was your question was about to filing or from filing to hearing? Right? Because
No. So, that's a good question. Thanks for allowing me to clarify. So once we file, right, then there's a period of time where there's another notice and then there's a hearing. That is part of that 6 months piece. I'm asking for, we've decided we're going to acquire 1637 Gorsuch Avenue. It's in the prep timeline. So we've decided we're going to do it. We've put it in that pile. How long is it taking for us to get to finally file the case?
So I understand now, and I think that's the answer.
Yes.
We'll get you more data. We should have. But I do want to also just add here that we are seeing, as far as the amount of cases that are getting filed, we're seeing that the amount of cases that are waiting for hearing continues to increase. So yes, the courts are moving at the time that we expected, but we can add more capacity to increasing the number of cases that are being filed. It still wouldn't change the flow that's coming out of the system. So while what I'm trying to say is while I do want us to understand that there's need throughout the system for improvement, I want us to make sure we're targeted about where it is right now because what we'll end up doing if we keep adding to the front end is we'll just have a backlog of stuff. Eventually, we will reach the capacity of the courts and we'll start to see delay. And where the value may be for us going forward is to continue the conversation that I know we've all been having around how we can help the courts increase capacity and increase flow there.
Right, well, we did in the last budget, and it's in the preliminary budget again, because we had committed to multi-year funding for the increasing the staffing at the courts. So we've done our part. We also asked the state for dollars last year, and there was a little bit of a challenge there, but I think we've got it this year, so that she can have additional staff to be able to make sure that, that's happening. So those conversations are ongoing. And because you're right, we have to see the entire, the system in its entirety to see how we can get more cases through. So I get that. So as we're doing that, I don't want to take, we need to have more capacity to get those in. And then we can say, well, we got all this capacity for the court, but we're still not getting there. Let's get them some more capacity, right? It's that same balance where she's saying, give me some more cases, or she was. And now she's really busy, that's like, get us some more cases. So I think people want to do this. This is our acquisition strategy. People want to see this happen. Obviously, when NREM 2 comes, that's a whole nother conversation around, what capacity is needed there in terms of adding those cases, because they're going to be slightly different. So that'll be a separate hearing that we're going to have in a couple weeks. So, but it is something that we still have to think through, because all of that, even within NREM 2, we would still need the filing attorneys, the title attorneys, all of that. And it is that one of the solutions for this issue of the assessments going up, because we need to have some way of addressing that. So I just, again, I asked for more dollars for this program for my in my budget, request, and hope that we can at least move that forward. So I think that that's a key timeline to kind of look at. And then the last piece is, I'll yield after this, although I do have more questions. The pipeline, I know that community development organizations want to know, is their case going through the pipeline? And the only time we get to see that is if it's actually filed, because it's on the case search. And so I've asked for in the past, some way of being a little bit more transparent about what cases are actually in this 791 pile, and what's the timing on it. Now, I get the issue that people still think that there might be, people either speculating in the area or whatever, if we're, obvious to that. But, frankly, if people are rehabbing houses and people are getting in, I'm like, as long as they're not those crazy New York investors, then let's figure this out. But I want to see, I think we're asking for a little bit more transparency there as to what is the makeup of the pipeline, so that there's planning, or at least some communication with the CDOs as in terms of where those properties are, and not just the BVRI properties, but all of the work that's being done is kind of where it is. Because I know some CDOs have come to me and said, we put ours in a long time ago and we don't know where it is. So was there any thought around, more transparency around the pipeline? I'm just going to call it the pipeline.
I do know that we have meetings regularly with community organizations, and where we check in on the cases that they've been following. And I answer a lot of emails with exactly those kinds of questions. But that's the level of transparency I think we've undertaken so far. Mm-hmm. And, I think the question of what we put up for public consumption is probably a policy question that I'm probably not the right person to answer.
I think at some point we need to have that discussion, because I think more transparency is better for everybody. So I'll yield for my next round. Thank you, Mr.
No problem. Councilman Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First off, I just want to thank everyone for their hard work, time, and attention to this matter, because, eliminating vacants is definitely a priority for the city. When it comes to as my colleague was talking about, the different stages in which these properties are going into, just looking at the sheer numbers, it looks like there may be a bit of a, bottleneck when you look at cases that have been filed, where it's 1,175, and then cases that are in court. Just my understanding, the ones that are filed, they're filed to go into court, correct? So it looks like, and the lowest number on this chart is 357. So it looked like the bottleneck is once you file, by the time it gets into the court, just kind of wanting to get a better explanation on like why is like that the cases, because if you look at cases filed, I guess, like filed into the court, but I guess they haven't been into court yet. When you look at cases in court, that looks like the lowest number. So I'm just trying to understand if I'm reading it right. Why does it take once it gets filed to actually go into court so long, and what could speed that up?
So I think the number of the cases filed is just from the time we started filing in rem cases.
Got you.
And then I think it's just a matter of math. If you subtract the number of titles, you'll get the number of cases that are still in court that we haven't opened.
Okay, so it's a rolling total. Okay, thanks for the clarification, appreciate that. My second question is, when you're looking at the ones that are currently in process or not complete yet, just want to get an idea of what the strategy looks like of the rollout for those interim properties to get them in the hands of developers. While I know certain neighborhoods have a whole block strategy where, you know, you have RFQs and you're working with developers, there are neighborhoods I'm looking on here that I don't know of whole block strategies that we're working with, and just want to know what that rollout look like for the ones that we don't have concentrated work groups around.
Sure, I can take that. On the disposition side, we have several ways, and you named a few. So we have our competitive offerings, which are RFPs, RFQs. In addition to that, we have Buying to Be More that hosts a fixed pricing program. And fixed pricing program is really for those scattered sites. So we have the ability, if there are, say the strategy is actually to acquire 4 scattered site, there's no known developer or no known offering, we can just offer it. And that is open to any developer, anyone from the public. Say you wanted to purchase it to rehab for your own private residence, that's the vehicle that we would use for that. For some of the concerted development projects, and I'll use the example of the developer RFQ that we are finalizing awards, that's actually scattered site, but under the auspices of a development registry. And so we actually withheld the property so that we could award to that, to those different registrants. Even though it's scattered site, it's still a concerted effort. It's a little bit mixture of the two. So what we like to make sure is that we have an offering for every level, so that there is scattered site. If there are bundles, say there are 5 properties on a block, and we want to make sure they all go together, we do that. The large site RFPs, we do that. In addition to that, we want to make sure in terms of, that's the what. So in terms of the who, we additionally, in terms of every level, want to make sure that we can target our emerging developers. We can target, you know, our experienced developers. So we want to make sure in every way when we're doing the disposition, even for in-rem, so we can't distinguish whether it was in-rem or came to our pipeline through negotiation. We have to look at what is the strategy for disposition, because in the case of like a site assembly, it's actually a combination of both, usually, of how we assemble the site. In those, I'm going to lay to the side a little bit because they may be a bit more complex and have other you know, acquisition that's needed, such as street closings, et cetera, to make a site work. So we don't distinguish in terms of, is it in REM? In REM is the vehicle for acquisition, but it may be that it's paired with a negotiation. It may be that it's on a block where we're doing receivership as well. So we're really thinking through what is that whole block strategy that's going to yield us the proper disposition method.
Councilman Blanchard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also want to compliment Commissioner Keene, as I always do, on the thick necktie. And I appreciate your commitment to your predecessor's signature neckwear. So keeping that trend going is good to see. So back in the February hearing, there was a slide about the disposition process review. And so it had, you know, application, review and award, REO review, real estate committee, board of estimates, settlement, compliance. And the next slide, it showed where they were at in the process. And there were 84 land disposition agreements underway, and 76 of them were going through the board of estimates process. And so something that I had a conversation with then Commissioner Kennedy about and am very interested in looking at legislatively is this a meaningful, is the Board of Estimates a meaningful bottleneck in the, is it a meaningful bottleneck in the disposition process in the sense of if properties were exempt, if they were under a certain amount, would we see a meaningful time saved and meaningful manpower saved? Or is it really that there's kind of other things in that process? And so if properties under 25K were exempt, it would basically, it wouldn't have a big impact. And I'm really curious to get DHCD's read on if we were to, just as an example, exempt properties under 25K from that, from going through the BOE for the disposition process, and then there would just be a required monthly, you know, some sort of way to make it public for the council and everybody reporting stuff. But would that meaningfully help with the process?
So we don't want to hypothesize on the amount of time that could be saved, specifically with the short notice, but I think that we can agree that this may be a helpful tool. And we look forward to further discussions and engagement with you and the committee on this. And this is something that we can go back and try to get more information on the time that it takes or it has taken in the past to provide to you.
Okay.
So I think it needs to be looked at in more of a greater context than.
Yeah. All right, I'll be sure to follow up on that one. The second one, and this for Deputy Mayor Young, it is specific. It's an 11 district specific thing, but it's a downtown situation. So, you know, downtown has the central business district and has the west side, and they're two different building types, right? And there's a lot of things that are different about the two, and they're both sort of unique asset classes in the city. And something that I've had great support from DHCD Legal and Code Enforcement on looking at vacants on the west side of downtown. And something that I'm worried about is we have this situation where these properties are going into receivership or about to go into receivership or already gone, right? But these aren't just row homes, right? These are like 5-story, single exit, you know, historic, unique, all these things are unique properties, right? And it's kind of what's awesome about them, but it makes it really, I think, challenging. It's not a plug and play in the same way that there's a lot of similarity between row homes. And so something that I think is really important for, I think, your office as well as for probably BDC is to make sure that as these properties, like we have 5 properties on the 300 block of North Howard, which may very well be in receivership very soon. Making sure we have developers who are prepared to put in that, you know, this is public and info, we're not prioritizing when it's still gonna go to auction, but there are people who can do this work who are prepared to put in good bids, and these aren't just going to people who don't know what they're doing and it's gonna be stuck with them for 3 or 5 years and we're gonna go back through this process again. So I just wanted to, we actually had a walk yesterday, and we've been having these meetings virtually for about 6 months, but it really drove it home to me that I think we are, because of all this good process with getting things into receivership, this is a significant problem that we're gonna be looking at for that area of downtown.
Yeah, I'll just say, look, we've got a stronger rebuilt real estate team at BDC. And of course, we've got the downtown pilot that was just passed, and the BDC board just approved the framework to be published on what developers should expect for the negotiations for each property. So I think the tools are there and the team is there. So absolutely, we have a better capacity as a city now, I think, than we had in the past to make sure that specifically for things that are happening downtown that we can be intentional.
Awesome. Yeah, I just want to put that on your radar because we're seeing, I think, so much progress over the last couple of years with our like row home vacants, but it is a really sort of unique situation on the west side of downtown. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I have a broader question. As we're thinking about the strategy of interim and then also acquisition, have we really put an investment into, and I've seen it on your social media, there are a lot of people who have inherited property and how are we asking them to actually just give it to us, right? You're not going to do anything with it. Are we partnering with a nonprofit where they can get the tax write-off for the property so that we can then put it in good hands and working through it? Because it is, I feel like it's a lane that we really haven't done well. We've gotten everything else well so far. How can we, if Mr. Johnson has inherited a building, he doesn't want it, he then wants to offset it instead of putting it up for sale, he could give it to the city with an acquisition process, and we find a nonprofit that will accept it and do a no-cost transfer to us, and we can figure it out. I think there's ways that we can be innovative in addressing that space too, and I'm just wondering, have we really thought that through?
We haven't thought specifically that, but obviously through the mayor's office, we've ramped up the donation program in general, which that would be a form of a donation. One of the considerations that we have to look at with inherited properties, and I'll use that loosely, is making sure that those that inherited the property are actually on the deed. And so, and that goes for whether it's a donation or, another type of acquisition, because we do run into that. And that's a hard situation because it comes with a different level of communication that is needed. And also, I would say, really referral to the family in some cases to make sure that if there are some things that they need to do to make sure they're on the deed and, the title is fine. So we haven't thought specifically in that way that a nonprofit would work with a person that inherited, but the donation program does accept, properties in that manner.
Yeah, I'm envisioning, because we have all these CBOs that are participating in BV, well, I'm not going to use the acronym, our joint venture with the state. If we have them in a queue, if we create a separate MOU for just this donation piece and provide them a fee for taking those referrals, walking the person through the transfer process, and then giving us the property, that helps us with figuring out what's best for some of these outcomes. Because I see a vacant building that is commercial, and I instantly think, because of the low acquisition prices in my district, that I'm going to have, depending on what the zoning is, anywhere from a group home to a substance use clinic to things that people never thought they want there, right? And it's just, how do we be creative in saying that, hey, this family may have inherited, someone in this company may have gotten property, they want to offset it. I'll give you an example. A plumbing company offsetted a large warehouse in Sandtown, Winchester, and we're now working with the Episcopal Church, well, actually the United Methodist Church, to actually turn it in to 100 units of affordable housing, right? But that took someone who was like, I want to take this right off, and I need someone to give it to. How do we work to do that and be creative in that slot? I think that's something I want to work with you guys on, but I think that might be the next level to go to.
I think that's a good suggestion and something that we can explore further and have more conversations, because it is something that is needed in some capacity. And we do have, our development partners, a wide variety of development partners that I think would step up. But I would want us to, from the legal side, everything we do, check from the legal side and make sure that there is no issue with doing that in terms of how we transfer, or if there are any issues. I will say if it's a BVRI CDO that's using state funds, if there's nothing that is going to be triggered. So I think those are the types of things that we can explore, but I think that's a great idea because the partners would love to be able to help.
Yeah, it's from having conversations with some of your partners anyway, because I have commercial properties that are just there. I'm at a point where I'm like, just knock it down at some point. But I'm also, because of redlining, dealing with a lot of properties that were both residential and office and residential zoned, because a lot of Black people couldn't have commercial property, so they had to actually put their actual establishment in their home and live above it. So we have a lot of that mixed zoning along Pennsylvania Avenue, along North Avenue, and some of those take a different approach, because you're not automatically gonna be like, it's all residential because of OR, right? I just wanna emphasize that conversation and look forward to partnering with you. And I'll turn it over to Councilwoman Ramos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Regarding the donation program, so the changes that we made to the donation program, program right now include the fact that we used to say, oh, you want to give us a property? Give us $600. That's insane. So I know that that was removed, which is great. Are we seeing an increase? I mean, I know you sent out a mailing. I suggested sending out the mailings to some of the NREM eligible properties because then it wouldn't have to go through NREM. It could go right through. So are we seeing more donations right now, even though I know it would be like a half year data?
I don't have the numbers. I can get the numbers for you, but I do know in conversations in the last week that we have seen more inquiries coming through,
Okay,
but I can get the exact numbers for you.
Yeah, thank you. And I know it's complicated both with the councilman's idea and with this in terms of the liens that are still on there. So we can we can release two different things, totally different things. We can release the liens, the municipal liens, but third-party liens are completely different. And that has to go through a little foreclosure process, which is different. So I think that there's still some things that have to be dealt with there, which is why I think NREM is better, because all of that goes away. And like literally is extinguished because it is a court process that says it is extinguished. So I think that all of these are really important, and we just want to put all the emphasis on that. And at some point, we'll have more of a conversation on the lien release. But I'm also aware that we have 2 other hearings. So I just have one last question. Actually, a real quick one, and then a request. So fixed price is, I know that the department developed it, in a couple of years ago, really to try to get more properties out the door, but also remove the time of having so many appraisers, because that was really taking up a lot of time. And so we just said, it doesn't matter the value of the property. We're going to sell it for this much if you're a homeowner. We're going to sell it for this much if you're a I firmly believe that that should be the case for all properties, because otherwise we're going to be, even with a block by block strategy, we're going to be, nickel and diming when we could just be getting the property back to good use. So I wanted to just know if there's any other conversation around that piece. I think the Gorsuch properties are doing what I'm suggesting, but I wanted to just make sure that that's what we're thinking about. Because it should really be for everything.
Well, I can't.
You need to put your microphone.
I had it on before, sorry. I can't say that it would be for everything.
Residential. That's a good
So
point.
everything residential, but even if the use is residential and say it's a, 8-acre site, then that sale is usually based on appraisal. And that's a completely different type of deal. And we review that deal and evaluate that deal in a different way. So the cost of the property is really looped in with the project budget in a different way. So I would probably lay those to the side. Now, for properties that fall under the criteria for fixed pricing, if it falls under the criteria, we're going to sell it for that price. And one of the things that I think is really important to understand, and this is usually how I think of it, is there is the fixed pricing program, and then there are LDAs, right? The land disposition agreement. So there are BOE approved LDAs related to the fixed pricing. And then we have an LDA, template that if it needs to be modified, if there's something particular in that deal, even in that case, if the use qualifies for fixed pricing, we're still going to sell it for the fixed pricing price, even though there may be some elements that have to be negotiated differently. So it's a yes and a no. Like if the question or the thought is, are there ways that we could expand the program or look at the program differently? I think that could be worth exploration. But could it be all properties? I would venture to say no, because there are certain types of deals that we have to evaluate differently.
Sure, and I appreciate that distinction. I do think that now that we are a couple of years in, there's, I think, some value in looking at what are some of the other properties that could be included. So I appreciate that. And then my data request would be for the attorneys, I had asked for my budget request 10 attorneys and for in-rem and requisite staff. You know, if we could at least understand what that cost would be for 5 of them, which would be 5 attorneys plus the paralegals, plus the title attorneys, plus the new copiers and new photo things and offices and all that. I mean, I want to just have a number to work with so to be able to advocate in a better way. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilman Blanchard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I was in the BVRI audience yesterday, and they had their scoreboard that they were going through, and I saw that there were, I think, 8,000 something failure to abate violations this fiscal year. And so it'll come out to roughly around 1 failure to abate violation per, averaging out. 1 per VBN right across the city is probably what we're going to come out to for the fiscal year. And this was a huge, like, we're really moving in the right direction on it. At the same time, I'm curious because a failure to abate can only be abated by a use and occupancy or demo. Neither of those things need a code enforcement inspector to go physically to the prop. Obviously, this could just be, you could just automate it, right? You could just say, theoretically, right? Like, you're gonna get an FTA every 2 months until you get one of these 2 things. And if you get a use and occupancy or demo permit in the next 3 years, then those, we have some way, and I don't want to use the wrong verb here, or Councilwoman Ramos will get mad at me, but that those fines could go away or something to that effect, right? Because we want to, obviously, we don't want to penalize the people who are, getting site assembling and then rehabbing a bunch of properties. But I guess, why do we currently have that process where the inspectors physically go to confirm what we already know?
Councilman, thank you for your question. I'd love to explain that the inspector process is pretty much influenced by the desired outcome just in case a inspection case has to go to court. When the court is determining what the outcome will be from their decision is usually based on the date of the notice, what has the person done along the way, and the final book-in inspection at the time of the proceeding. So if there are no inspections along the way and it's just an issuing of citations, when we get to the end of the court process and we're actually filing and trying to get an outcome on that end, there's no data along the way. Here is the other challenge with that, just from an inspection standpoint. If inspectors don't have eyes on the properties in a consistent basis as best we can with the demand, we aren't able to identify open to casual entry. We're not able to identify whether somebody's illegally occupying a particular property. So to automate and not have eyes on, we could have some exposures in that space. Now, from an automation standpoint where it could help the inspector, their time is being utilized during the data input. And right now, when they come back and they have to issue that FTA, they may have to enter several systems just to get that FTA out the door. If on the back end, as we look at our current system and look at improving it, if we could just hit one button so that the FTA could get issued, that will save them back office time. But if we have those gaps because the system is automated, then we have some exposure and we might not get the desired outcome once there's a court proceeding.
Okay, thank you for that thorough explanation. I guess I'll just, just kind of say that I would think that kind of bigger picture, right, because we have NREM as a tool and all these things, like I have a lot of properties in my district that got a VBN 10 years ago and getting the first FTA in 2026, things like that. And so and obviously our code enforcement inspectors are needed to do a lot of things, and having failure to abate, there's multiple besides just stacking it, we're reminding the owners that they can't keep their property like that, right? Like there are, so I don't mean to, maybe I'm trying to give a recommendation on a process when I should just be, pointing out the bigger picture and suggesting the agency come up with something. But I think that probably my hunch is that the right amount of FTAs in a year is probably even with this big increase that we're at, it's probably still a lot higher than what we're currently looking at, I would think.
Yeah, because as the data reflects now, we have done about 23,500 inspections on vacant buildings to date this fiscal year. As we continue to improve our operational processes with bringing on more inspectors, the sanitation enforcement team, which will take some weight off of the inspectors having to do the sanitation, what we're hoping is that as we continue to evolve this model, it will create that bandwidth so that we can have more intentional focus on vacant buildings, the more boots we have on the ground, segregate the sanitation from the VBN stuff. So we're working towards that end, and we're definitely focused on it. And I thank you for that suggestion. But the opportunity is in the back office, just that one button. If I go out and I do 20 inspections, but I'm tied up in the back office because I got to check this stuff before I issue the FTA. As we continue to improve our system, if we can make sure that we have that one button that, we put our inspection and hit the button and we just keep it moving. So we can get there, and we're working towards that end.
Thank you, Deputy. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I have a quick follow-up, and so does Councilman Ramos. I love it, but the other side of code enforcement still fails. I don't know why he's not here, but because a lot of this feeds into his shop. Like today, my staff discovered that we had a rental license on a building with a VBN, right? How is that even possible if you need to have an occupancy or demolition, right? But we have people living in a structure that we say is vacant and you shouldn't live in. But this is a reoccurring theme across council districts. While the sanitation in the other arm of code enforcement has been out there doing what is yeoman's work, and I see the SR is responsible for it, the other side of it, which is special investigations, continues to be the liability of the agency of just being transparent, because how do I have a family of 6 living in a property that has a VBN on it? That means they had to be eligible for 2 unabated citations, a failure to abate, all those things in a calendar year. Or it's open access, so you let someone rent a property that used to have boards on it, and now you open the door. It's frustrating because, and I'll be frank, like, I'm happy with the other side of code enforcement because we were able to go into neighborhoods and get some conditions under control through it and work with seniors through Ms. Hart's office to get them the things that they need, because instead of code enforcing them, we're providing them resources. But the other side of it is still the frustrating part, because I can't explain to this woman how she's able to rent a property that is not habitable and has conditional issues now that could have been fixed had this person had to use an occupancy in all the inspections. So just to add that language. Councilwoman Ramos.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of what we're trying to do in our rental bill that we have a hearing on next week as well. So I appreciate that, Mr. Chair. Just a follow up on the FTAs. Deputy Commissioner, can you remind me how often, what's the time frame that you're being proactive on trying to inspect vacants? Or are you simply just relying on 311s?
No, we are intentional about assigning vacants every day to the inspectors, because we know that's strategically aligned with the overarching strategy.
Yeah, I need more citations on these.
Yeah. Working on it. We're working towards that, and we wanted to. That's why we looked at how do we reshape our business model to make certain that we can get on top of these vacant buildings and the inspections. Currently, there's like a 60-day window, to your point, where we can issue a FTA every 60 days. We're trying to get to the point where we have the capacity to make certain that we can get to them on day 61.
Okay, well, just a reminder, the law says there's a new violation every day. That's what the law says. So that's where this idea of the automated came in. But I understand that you need to build a case, in case something goes to court. I want to get that down. I mean, I know that that's an issue with, inspections, and you need iPads on the street and, you know, some of the technology issues. But I think we do want to narrow that window to, you know, the 30 days. The other thing about it is that, you know, we continue to see work being done without permits. And the only way that we can see what happens there is that, you know, an inspector goes out and is proactive, which is on my other rant that I won't go back into today, but that if your guys are seeing it, then we can address it. And that goes back to the health and safety issues. So that's why I think more often is going to be important. You need to let us know how many people you need, which I think was at a request from last time, to make that happen.
Yeah, we are, I'm gonna tell you, we are very, very diligent in bringing people on board. Our challenge is getting them to stick, right? You know, it's a workforce challenge. You know, once they come through the classroom portion and they hit the street, and the realities of being in the back alley pop up, next thing you know, we got somebody resigning. So what our challenge has been is just trying to net people, shut the back door so that people don't retire and leave us. Get people to come on board, get them street ready so that they're ready to do those inspections. And that has been some challenge. The workforce has been some challenge, but we continue to stay diligent. Assistant Commissioner Erica Yates, I told her to own that process when it comes to hiring, and she stays on top of that, as well as the training piece for the inspectors. We've even tried to shorten our training window so that we can get boots on the ground quicker, without skipping some of the important technical stuff that leads to a case. So we've looked at everything to try to be more efficient and effective.
Yeah, and I know it's tough because you don't ever want to be in somebody's back alley where somebody's yelling at you because you're in the back alley.
Yeah.
It's happened to me. I get it.
Just a clipboard and a camera.
But I mean, I think it's such a crucial piece
agree.
of this work.
I agree.
That, you know, we want to add to that capacity. And if there's hiring challenges, we need to understand what those hiring challenges are. You know, because I can't ask for more pins until there's actually ways that, you know, people are staying.
Okay.
So that's going to be critical to know.
Yeah, technology, and I have some thoughts on that, so I'll discuss it with the team here, with regard to targeted hiring as opposed to the shotgun blast.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate it. I'll follow up with you directly.
All right,
Thank you. Any other questions, colleagues? Okay, so that being said, we'll now move on to LO 250030, financing for vacant and abandoned properties. And I will turn this over to the commissioner once again.
All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Michael Moxton. I am the Director of Finance for City of Baltimore. And I will walk you through how vacants have been financed and where we're going with it. Next slide, please. So I'm going to start with a quick recap. We are undertaking a $3 billion strategy to eradicate vacancy in the city. And this was kind of putting the old model on its head. For decades, the approach was to see how much money we had, scrape up what usually was just a few $1 million, and then spend it as best we could. A few years ago, though, we did something different. We just asked how much would it cost to fully eradicate vacancy in the city. The answer was $3 billion of public investment. And I stress public because there is a lot of private activity alongside the public activity. The thing about a vacant is nobody wants to live next to a vacant. But if you can fix the vacant, then other people want to do other things with those properties on the same street. So we then asked how to get to $3 billion. And if it was easy, it would have been done already. The reason that there was never enough money to go around in the city's history, a lot of reasons, but the vacants were a part of it. Vacants are terrible in many ways. They're terrible for the people that live near them. They're terrible for those communities, and they're terrible for the city's finances. Vacants don't produce any tax revenue for us, hardly any. And it's actually worse than that because they suppress home values all around them. It's really even worse than that because there's a runaway effect. Once you have enough vacants on a block, you tend to lose the whole block, and then you lose the corner store at the end of that block. So vacants have been a tax sinkhole for the city for generations. The good news is we can take that and put it on its head. Just run the reasoning in reverse. If it's true that that vacant isn't generating tax revenue for me that otherwise would have been there if it was a house, then it's also true that if we rehab that vacant, then I will get a revenue stream. And that means that we can borrow against those future revenue streams to put capital on the ground immediately. And that is the fundamental principle of how the city approached this. We launched the first ever non-contiguous TIF in the history, not just of the city, but of the country, which I'll walk you through in just a minute, as part of the financing strategy for vacants. We took a long-term view. We estimated that in 15 years, we could eradicate vacants. And over the course of those 15 years, we committed to raising at least $150 million through tax increment financing, and additionally, at least another $150 million through bringing back the Industrial Development Authority, which is another tool that's been used in the past to issue bonds and create capital for the purposes of rejuvenating the city, again, applying it to the entire city rather than just to limited neighborhoods around the water. That was the city's $300 million. And we then partnered up with the state on a 3-to-1 ratio that we had in a previous much smaller programs. And the state showed up. We got a commitment of $50 million a year in perpetuity through the BVRI. That, over the 15-year period, is at least $750 million in conjunction with Bernie funds, which fluctuate year by year. That's a commitment of at least $900 million, and suddenly we're in the billions rather than where we've been in the past, which is in the millions. The plan for getting the rest of the way there is first to leverage philanthropy. There's been philanthropic support for vacants for many years. We are now working hand in hand with those philanthropic organizations to target that support, to make it go hand in hand with public funds. And we are looking to raise $300 million through philanthropy over this 15-year period. That's halfway there. That is more money than we've ever had and gives us plenty to do with it. But in order to get the entire way there, our first proposal is to look at the one thing that every other big city has that Baltimore doesn't, and that is a local share of sales tax. That is still not in law. That is something we're fighting for, but a single percentage point of sales tax would let us generate $1.5 million in capital, and that would get us the rest of the way there. And just to round out that proposal, 2 percentage points of sales tax, which is less than the median of what large cities around America get, would be enough to do all that, finish out the vacants program, and do a historic decrease on property taxes, which would bring us in line with surrounding jurisdictions, and we believe is also an important part of this program. Next slide. Thank you. So the city's financing is right now focused on the TIF, the Affordable Housing TIF. In December 2024, with the support of this council, we passed the TIF legislation that created the district. This is 8,500 properties around the city. And this was a different approach than what had ever been done before. Rather than drawing a circle on a map, and saying everything in this area we're gonna count the taxes for, but we can only limit the improvements to this area. We made the vacants themselves the TIF district. The district is dots on a map, and if you look at what the map then looks like, it looks like our vacancy problem. It looks like exactly the communities that need help that in the past had not gotten hardly any investment for this kind of work. We are taking a tranched approach to the TIF. What that means is in the district, there are already some homes that have been rehabbed in the last couple of years. We formed the district in 2024. We had a look back that allowed us to go back to 2023 and include anything that had been vacant as of 2023, in some cases that had now been rehabbed and was producing revenue. That revenue then backs the first tranche of bonds that we just released a few months ago. And those bonds are going to fix more houses. When that's done, those houses are going to also produce revenue for us. That revenue will let us release tranche 2. Tranche 2 will let us release tranche 3, and so on, accelerating as we go. So in the ordinance, we authorize the city to issue up to $65 million against this district. Now, this district can actually produce a lot more in TIF financing when we're fully spun up. We agreed to set an initial cap of $65 million and then come back to the council when we're ready. The money can be used for vacant housing rehabilitation into affordable housing, as well as public infrastructure improvements. So those are the two big things that TIF money is going to. It's infrastructure on large projects, and most importantly, on smaller projects and individual houses. The TIF is funding something called the appraisal gap. It's the notion that if it takes $200,000 to fix a house, but then you can only sell it for $150,000, we have created a grant program based on an application process that would fill that $50,000 gap. I'm mentioning 50 because it's roughly the average of the awards from this program, but it does not have to be 50. It can be less or it can be more depending on what the project needs to come to completion. And based on this approach, we released our first tranche of TIFs in December of 2025. Next slide. Now, here's the exciting thing for me from a finance perspective. The investment community loved these bonds. We had $28.8 million worth of bonds that we put on the street. We received $389 million worth of offers on those bonds. It's almost a 14-to-1 ratio, and that bodes really well for the future. Right now in the present, it means we got a very nice lower interest rate than we would have gotten otherwise. All in, we sold them at just about 5% even, and that is quite good in today's environment, roughly in line with where U.S. Treasuries are these days. For a brand new program, this was very exciting. It also means that when we go to sell bonds like this in the future, we have essentially proven the case that the demand is there for these kinds of bonds as long as we can structure them, as long as we can find the worthy projects and show that those projects are moving forward. The bonds will help fund increased resources for community development, close the appraisal gaps, as I just talked about, which will increase property tax revenues, build wealth and equity by emphasizing home ownership. We're emphasizing equity by giving priority to legacy residents, households earning 60% of area AMI, and as well as prioritizing small and emerging developers. Funds for this funds projects citywide, as well as infrastructure improvements. And the district is essentially a citywide district, so this will be infrastructure throughout the city. And finally, it supports the whole block approach that we have taken to this work. So a lot of exciting work ahead. This was the Series 2025 TIF issue, as we call it in technical parlance, because it came out in December 25. We are already deep in the work on Series 26. Series 26 will take us through the end of that $65 million cap that was approved by City Council. And we are looking at the projects that are lining up, looking at the work around the city, starting to think about Series 27. So we'll be back later this year to talk about the cap and talk about raising the cap. We had talked about the TIFs as being at a minimum $150 million investment as part of this program, but that was just the minimum. We will do as much as we are safely able to do. And right now, we're in the process of evaluating these projects and putting all this work together. But that is some of the money currently flowing into vacants, and there's a lot more to come. So with that, I'll take your questions.
Thank you, Director. I applaud the efforts. One is one of the main beneficiaries of the TIF district, but also aware that there are generational changes that we can lead from our seats. This is one that may actually live out longer than I may be. Hopefully it will subside one day, because we'll have a city that does not have vacants. But I am a realist. There will always be a vacant, probably one with a bank-owned property, but I applaud you guys for thinking about the creativity, and then I will kick it over to members for questions, starting with Councilwoman Ramos, and then she'll take over as chair.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to just ask a couple of questions about where we are. So has there been any money actually on the street yet? And how much?
So yes, we have moved some money already for the more advanced developers that we partnered up with in order to get the work started sooner, the big six, as we call them.
Yes.
We are in the process of sort of approving their paperwork. I think money has just started to flow, so this is very, very recent. The significant flow will really start over the next couple of months. But do my colleagues in DHCD have the exact number as of today?
We don't have that, but we can get that. That's from our project finance team, so we will get that.
Okay, great. The other thing...
Can I make that a data request, please? Thank you.
The other thing that's coming very soon is the competitive awards have almost completed their review. So we are in the very final stages, and in the next few weeks, possibly by the end of the month, we will be sending out award letters to the individual submitters for those, and then money for those will flow very quickly as well. So we'll get you the latest information. The trickle has just started, but it's going to turn into a flow approximately in the next 3 to 4 months.
I understand this is a new program, so it does take a while to ramp up, which is, we needed to see if we would have the money first, and then, work with the big six on the process. So I understand that.
Absolutely. And to that point, this is a new process. New process for us to get used to, a new process for the developers to get used to, because it's backed by a certain kind of bond. There are reporting requirements that are new to some developers in this line of work. The good news, and why I'm stressing the 26 series and the 27 series, is that we're going to do this again and again, and the mechanism is going to be the same every time. So over the next 15 years, this is going to become a feature of the landscape, and we're only going to improve at how quickly we get the money out the door.
Yeah, thank you. The other question I had was around the process. When we passed this bill, to authorize this, one of the things that we talked about was that the person would not get the dollars until the UNO was produced. And that they would, front load and then, but that the money was part of the stack, not the entire process. Is that still the case? Or is there additional work that has to be done other than just the use and occupancy? It looks like we don't have the right people in the room to answer that question.
We can come back to you on that. I mean, roughly speaking, we are following the original plan. This is part of the capital stack. We put the money out the door as soon as it's needed. So essentially, as soon as the submission is complete, showing what the work is and having the right level of oversight over it. I wanna make sure we answered this precisely, so we'll come back to you.
Yeah, I'm just gonna need the timeline and flow, exactly like from the time that they get an award to the time that the money is in hand, like what is that? And it may depend on how slow they are or how fast they are for development, but what is that point? Is it the use and occupancy where they've said, here's my capital stack, the 50,000, I'm just using that as a number, just in a number. The 50,000 fits here, the house is rehabbed and that, because to me, that was like a really good way to say, oh my gosh, you gotta use permits. You're not gonna get your money unless you get a use and occupancy because you gotta use permits. I mean, that's part of why we wanted to do this too, so that everybody does this correctly.
So we'll check on that, and we'll work with you all to make sure that everything, and we'll go through you first to make sure that you're doing the report back to city council, because I know this is a different hearing, but we'll just coordinate across the board on that in terms
Well,
of timing.
it's part of financing is not just, I think the questions were not just about like what the money is, but how is the money getting out the door? Because just like we need more properties for folks, we need them to get the money to be able to do what needs to be done.
No, we'll make sure we have that timeline in the process. I'm just not able to answer at this moment what it is. I do know that their pre-award letters are being drafted right now, and
For the applicants, not the big six.
For the applicants,
Yeah.
not the big six. In addition to that, I'll say from my team side, anything that requires like the settlement, like if they're actually purchasing from us, that we're working to make sure those things are moving. But I can't speak to post that, once it gets to the actual, money in hand. So we'll find that out for you.
Okay, I appreciate that, and I'll be happy to put it in writing but that would be a data request, is to try to get that process going. I'll turn to my colleagues. Councilman Jones, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, Vice Chair. When you was looking up with the $3 billion worth of funding in the chart that showed, all the different sources of where the money was going to come from, that biggest chunk was the 1.5 was from, I guess, potentially raising tax revenue. Is there a plan if that doesn't happen? I mean, because that's kind of half the funding source from what I hear, or is there a plan B or like a long-term vision for this other areas of funding?
There are always plans B, C, and D. I talked about how the $150 million on the TIF is a floor, not a ceiling. And as we had our first issue, we are growing in our confidence that this is a revenue stream that can grow for us. We are also looking at growing the IDA, and we will look at what our state partners can do, and in a different world, since this is a 15-year program, what our federal partners can do one day. But I don't want to sugarcoat how big of an item the sales tax is. I know it's a tough item to talk about, but it is the one thing in our toolkit that would get us there overnight. So we'd like to keep talking about that even as we develop other funding streams to get us there. And now with that being said, this is the back half of the program, and we've got a lot of money on the front half to get out the door, and that's what we're focused on today.
Is there a projection on whether or not we'll run out of funding or keep moving this program if that doesn't change, or if we kind of just what we have today?
We are very much in kind of new territory with what we're doing, in that we've created funding streams that have never existed before to do work at a pace that we've never done it at before. We do have projections that we made at the outset, but we are constantly modifying those projections based on what we're actually seeing. The good news, I would say, is we are seeing wonderful progress with the money that we have, with what we've been able to do. We are, roughly speaking, now seeing the vacants fall by a net of about 1,000 a year. And this is very new. They were falling a little bit, like 400 to 500 a year a few years ago. That accelerated to 700 last year, and this year it's on pace to have fallen by 1,000. We're down to 11,800. If we can sustain that momentum, we will get there. And as finance director, I'll be the first to tell you, if we can do something and it ends up costing us less money than we thought, that'd be wonderful. We will applaud that and think about what needs to be funded next. But we are cognizant that this costs money, this costs resources, and we're going to keep looking for ways to get to the full $3 billion even as we get this really huge amount of money out the door that we already have available.
Thank you.
Okay. Councilman Blanchard?
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I guess two questions, thoughts. I am concerned that the chart, the 3 billion thing.
Sure.
I think it's about 18 months old at this point. Like we've seen this, it's been, in the public for a while now.
Absolutely.
I think it's been out there since before I was on the council, which feels like 20 years now. The like additional funding source, Rainbow is, I guess I'm just like, that's just something I'm weary of is, at what point are we going to kind of refine this more? Because I understand on the front end, right, that we would not have some details, but I think we need to start seeing more of this fleshed out.
Sure. Thank you, Councilman. It's an absolutely fair question. I wanted to start just with a little context and history, which is why we're starting with a chart that everyone who follows this work has seen many times. The components of this chart will be updated in real time, and some of those updates are coming very soon. As I talked about, our thinking around the TIF is already starting to change for the better. We want to make sure that we're seeing not just the money hit the street, we want to see the houses rise, but that will happen quickly. And so as early as this year, we are going to come back and talk to you about what more the TIF can do. I know the state is doing a lot of work around BVRI. They are right now starting to review the third round of BVRI, the third $50 million. Money is not easy to find. If it was easy, it would have been done already. It is why we are looking at such strong options as the sales tax, because it's one of the few things that other places do that we don't do. But with that being said, the smaller components of this are going to be updated later this year. And even more importantly, for where we're at right now, for this year, for next year, we are doing the work we want to be doing, and that's showing in the 1,000 vacants a year net that we're reducing.
Yeah, I appreciate that. The in the second point, question, whatever, you know, we have the 15-year strategy, and obviously we want that to be as actually few years as possible, right? We want it to be a 10-year strategy, an 8-year strategy, right? And I think that, you know, when I saw the news a month ago or 2 months ago, whatever, about like how much demand there was for the bonds, right? Like, there's definitely temptation to be just like, well, just make the next one the other 122 million, and then come back, you know, and then let's go, right? We should have our foot on the gas, taking some risk here. I get that, like, it's gonna take some time to iron out the details in the process and everything, but I guess it's just like, you know, on something that's this big a priority, I definitely think we should err on the side of being aggressive and trying to move fast. And so yeah.
Thank you, Councilman. I think we agree in our philosophy here. We are going to floor the gas pedal without breaking it. There is definitely potential here with the TIFs. We are going to do as much as we can. I want to keep level setting because we have to do it right, and also something that was meant to be 150 million. We will see how high it can go. I don't want to just tell you that it's gonna cover $1 billion or more. We will have to keep looking for every possible stream, but we are revising our assumptions, and we are approaching this with a maximum level of, I would say, thoughtful, data-driven optimism, because we really are seeing that good news. And I completely agree on getting through this in 15 years or less. 50, so I talked about the floors, 15 years is our ceiling. It's our maximum. Honestly, if we keep this pace, which is accelerating as we speak, we will get there faster than 15 years. I wanna just very quickly respond to something that the chair said before he had to run. I truly appreciate his comments, but I do think that we're gonna get this done in our lifetimes, because I wish us all a happy, long life, but I expect to get this done in under 15 years. I expect to get this done in our professional careers. And a vacant is a terrible but also very unusual thing that we've been forced to just become accustomed to in Baltimore, like it's a normal part of life. But it is possible to get to functional zero. If you take the definition of VBNs that Baltimore City uses and apply it to Baltimore County, you will see fewer than 1,000 vacants in the entire county. I've heard by some measures the number can be as low as 100. That's because a vacant isn't just a house with a for sale sign in front of it. And we can have other conversations about homes that we want to sell faster to move people into, but a vacant is a home that is uninhabitable. And because of that, it is our biggest priority and something that we've been willing to be aggressive on and apply a level of innovation on, do new things on, because it has to be solved. But also, we really do think that functional zero, as we call it, something that is under 1,000, is truly possible, and that is the end state we're chasing.
And thank you. And my last question on this, so I think it's the 37 million that's left underneath this cap. The process for getting that, I guess we would say, out to bid, the bonds out to, can you just talk through both the process and the timeline of when we can expect these additional 37 million in bonds?
Absolutely. This calendar year. The process is to line up projects that we are confident will actually get spent in the required amount of time. These are tax-exempt bonds, which requires that the money be spent in 3 years or less, and actually has some requirements for some amount of money being out the door in the first 6 months. So we work with some partners in development to make sure we have projects lined up. And we're always looking at doing competitive rounds and balancing between the two. And when our I's are dotted and our T's are crossed, we put out the issue. TIFs used to take years. Other TIFs we've done from when we had the legislation passed to when the bond was sold would be 3 to 4 years. We are doing it on a much faster timeline than we've ever done it before. And like I said, we want to floor the gas pedal without breaking it. This still has to be done with full due diligence. But we're finalizing the second issue now so that we can get it out the door this calendar year. And we are getting our data ready to come back to you to talk about going beyond the cap so that we don't lose a moment of time. So it's all happening in parallel so that as soon as we have something to show you, we'll get the cap raised hopefully with your permission, and we will get the third issue out the door just as quickly. I think it's going to accelerate from there.
Great, thank you. So I definitely appreciate that wanting to do the work in a certain amount of time. I want to caution everybody to understand that I think we need to be intentional. It's not just about the number of vacants going down, it's about creating mixed income communities that we're proud of. And so sometimes we may need to be diligent and hold on to properties while we do that work. So I think I'm totally there on the urgency. Like I think I was the one who said 15 years and everybody started saying 15 years. But the idea of let's do this in a strategic way so that we're not getting the bad guys of acquiring all of our properties, using their capital and giving us something that we don't want. So I think there's a real balance there. The urgency is absolutely there. I've always said we need to acquire, the city should acquire all of our vacants so that we can be strategic about that. That's, where some of the work that we just talked about comes in. So just wanted to say we want to be urgent and, but we want to also be strategic. So I know that sometimes those don't always agree with each other.
I completely agree. I know my colleagues in the HCD completely agree. We have a balanced approach that is making sure that we build those communities. The one thing I would say is there is a way to balance urgency with thoughtfulness, and that is to build a pipeline so that we have certain kinds of things that are ready to go at any moment.
That's right.
And that's what we're trying to do right now.
Yep, thank you. My question on the TIF is about the affordability period. We've talked about, and it says in the charter and the authorization legislation that the money needs to go for affordability and infrastructure. And the affordability is both on the rental and the homeownership side, so there's flexibility there. How long is the affordability period that we're putting into these agreements?
I don't know if my colleagues
For
have
the dollars.
an answer right now.
We'll have to get back to you.
Okay, at one point in time, it was a year, and I'm just gonna tell you, that is not enough time. I think, when we think about the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, when we think about LIHTC, LIHTC is 25 years, and in Maryland, we've added another 40-year rider, right? So when we talk about affordability, we have to be intentional, because what we don't want to have happen is that somebody rehabs a property, it's for a rental, it's affordable for a year, and then the year is done, we're going to kick all these people out because, we've raised the rent, and then we lose affordability, okay? If this is really supposed to be something that provides us with the opportunity for affordable mixed income communities, then we need to use it that way. So a year is just too small for amount of time.
Yeah, they absolutely agree. And the approach here is not to just create something temporary and artificial and then kick people out. The point is to build in places, to do the work in places that are going to build mixed income communities, including affordable housing that is just a part of the structure. So we'll come back to you with the exact
We have
information.
a lot of data requests.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I think,
This is just helping us prep for the real show later this year when
Right.
we ask to raise the cap. We'll need to get you all this data anyway, and we will have a lot of data for you.
yeah, no, I think that's really critical. Again, we need to utilize it in that way. And just another note on the vacant property number, I actually think that we have so many more vacant properties than what we're marking, and that's because there's a lot of empty ones that don't reach the level of the VBN. And I've been working on for years, it's totally my fault, I have not done it, I've just been working on it, a way to be able to measure that, because those are our pre-vacants. And you all know which one I will talk about. And I need a VBN on it, and I can't get it. Ms. Faye's been dead for 7 years, and the property's not falling down because the neighbors are actually taking care of the lawn, and they're taking the mail out of the thing, and they're just because they don't want it to look bad next to them. And that, we're doing a disservice by not doing anything with that property. It's actually still marked owner occupied, so it keeps getting taken out of tax sale. So, and I know you're working on it, we're gonna talk about tax sale later in the next
of course.
hearing, so we'll talk about that. But anyway, so that's just something to think about. My last question is about the IDA. Where are we on that? We've talked about the IDA, the legislation was taken care of years ago, so there's nothing that we, the council, have to do about that. Is that correct? And what are we, are we creating this board? Are we going ahead and utilizing the bonding authority? Like, what's happening with the IDA?
We reauthorized the charter last year. So the IDA is live. We want to make sure that we have the right viable sort of proposal and policy package that we're going to tie to the IDA. So it is heavily in the works. We're basically looking, just like we did with the TIF, for a way to take future revenue, future returns, and bring it into the present in terms of bonding capacity. I want to give you something that is actionable, so I can't finish the thought today because we're not quite done, but we are prioritizing it very heavily because we need to get to the city's $300 million commitment, but we are looking to grow the city's $300 million commitment. That means growing the TIF, and that means doing the IDA and potentially growing the IDA. So we will.
Do we think we're going to see the IDA in the next year, like sometime next fiscal year?
We are working very hard on that. I'm afraid to make a commitment that isn't fully under our control, considering we're creating something fundamentally new here, but we are working very hard to do it on that timeline.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Jones, did you have another question? Yes. Turn on your microphone, please.
Yes, what was my question? Oh, yes, then I remember what it was. It was less of a question, but more of something I just want to put on your radar. Because I know sometimes agencies don't always talk to each other. But we have, when it comes to developing properties, we have ran into an issue over at DPW where traditionally a developer is not responsible for the pipe that goes from the meter to the main. But now, I guess after developers are kind of done fixing these houses for the most part, rehabbing it, they're trying to get a UNO. They're being told now that in some cases they're now responsible for the pipe that goes from the meter to the main, because the city cut them off, the vacants, and decided that just leave it and cut it off. It would be a good use. So now when they get to this final stage and they're just realizing this, all the money spent, they really kind of already done fixing up the houses. It may be a good use of some of this funds to put it aside so that in these special cases in which, you have a developer who's finished the house and they're trying to finish it and fix it up, and they're in the final stages and the funds aren't there, that there's a set of funds available to kind of take care of this from the meter to the main situation. Just put that on your radar.
Sure. So we are definitely aware of that issue. I can't speak in terms of the TIF if there are any set-asides for that, but I do know in specific projects that we have encountered where we have looked for dollars to kind of fill that cost. And so one of the conversations that I know that we need to have is actually from an overarching policy perspective, because it impacts way more properties than we actually know, right? What we know are from the projects that are moving forward, where developers, to your point, have said this is what we have encountered. But in preliminary conversations from a policy standpoint, we do still have to tackle that issue. Because we are dealing with some vacants that have been long-term vacants, that have been, the pipes and utilities have been abandoned for a long time. So I think that's a conversation that we in DHCD can have in partnership with DPW. And I know those conversations preliminarily have happened as it relates to very specific projects where we have been looking to backfill the cost of that, because obviously the project budget and the capital stack change. So we are definitely aware of that, and we will continue to have those conversations.
Absolutely. So, and I just wanted to add that this is very much on our radar. TIF money can be used for that kind of infrastructure, and depending on the project proposal for the competitive awards, it could absolutely be a part of that. That's sort of part of bringing the house to completion. I also wanted to mention that when we made the original estimate of $3 billion as the need to finish this work, $1 billion of that $3 billion was infrastructure. We've always kept track of the fact that that water, sewer connections are a necessary part of the work, along with every kind of infrastructure that goes around the house.
And I did just want to add, as part of that conversation, we talk about the vacants that have been, vacants for a long time, but moving forward, as, we do demolition, as we have new vacants, part of the conversation that we're having, and have, I know at least one conversation with DPW is in terms of a protocol. We don't actually want you to cut that connection because it is, a project cost that increases. So the conversation is really twofold in terms of, money to projects that are, already encountering this, but also moving forward, that we don't want to create this situation. And so that is the preliminary conversation that we've been having, and we will flesh that out even further.
Just as a follow-up, it's actually in the law that the water has to be cut off once there's a VEBN. Then there's a reason for that. I mean, because maybe it's a project cost there, but there's water damage and all of the other things, especially in the winter.
No, it is, but that I think is part of the conversation as we work through the mayor's goal of the functional zero and understand that our I'll say, combined efforts to get are causing probably unforeseen circumstances as we ramp up in volume. So maybe there's a legislative change that we need to do, but that conversation is something that we are already trying to think through because it's only going to keep happening. As we ramp up, not only on acquisitions, but dispositions. So it is a conversation that I know that we've definitely had as it relates to specific projects. It's not fleshed out, but on the back end and the front end.
So I'll make a committee request. I would like to see, based off of the current water main projects and replacements that we have programmed out in the CIP to overlap with the TIF district, because we know exactly where we're going to go in terms of water main projects, and we know exactly where the district is. That's a simple way to overlay to actually get an understanding of potential down the line costs of what it's going to look like. But we also have the past couple of CIPs. I'll give you an example. I delayed a water project in Penn North because of this same exact reason, because then BGE has to come in and put pipes in, and then also we got to do an entire water main replacement, right? All those things have to be thought out and programmed in, so there's no additional cost, but I still got ties to the line that I don't have to build, because one of the developers, I believe, said it was $20,000 to tie into the water main for just that singular property, and then the cost was based off of doing the road reconstruction to fill in what happened already. So I think that as we can't change the past, but we can change the future and plan for it in the future if we have dollars set aside for infrastructure. If we know we're gonna do a whole block, and we know that they're gonna be on the same process in terms of DPW installing a new water main, then we already know how to cost that out and make sure it's happening. Just some systems thinking, like we know the problem,
Yeah,
we just need to think it forward.
I think you're absolutely right, and we will work to get you that data. I want to make one tiny footnote here, and that is that the $3 billion is the need. We have the need identified. It is part of the work that we all have to do to find those dollars to meet that need. The TIF can be a part of it, but it's just one funding stream. So as much as it's the mission of the Department of Finance to find that money, it's truly a citywide and a statewide effort that I'm gonna keep talking to you about and seeking partnership on.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with you. I'm just thinking long-term. We have contracts that are on the street for water main projects. We might as well overlay it with what these are in terms of the TIF district. If we know we're assembling the whole block, let's just have that conversation with both DPW and BGE about like, hey, let's prioritize this. That way we're not, there's nothing worse than having a rehab home and then someone has to come back through, add a pipe and tie it into a line, or add a new gas line. You got to figure out which wall in your property you want them to knock down, then you got to replace, right? Because that's what's happening when they're installing the new gas meters in a number of our homes. So it's easier to get on the front end of it and working with our partners to prevent the unsatisfied, wholehearted customer who has to remain here and pay the property taxes, plus be frustrated with utility bills from what they could have been expecting.
Absolutely. We're
Any other
completely
questions,
aligned.
colleagues? Okay, so I believe we are sunsetting this hearing, and now we're gonna move into the tax sale and reform vacancy prevention. Kick it back over to you guys.
Good evening. Deputy Commissioner Nicole Hart, in regards to LO 25-0033, tax sale reform and vacancy prevention. So quickly to go over the agenda, I will cover tax sale prevention, homeowner and resident protections, and then the third thing, which will be equitable homeowner strategies. So to start with tax sale prevention, in my shop sits the Office of Tax Sale Prevention and Community Affairs. In FY '26, we officially made the director of the Office of Tax Sale Prevention the actual city tax sale ombudsman, as mandated in the Baltimore City Code. And so in this role, the ombudsman is the designee by the commissioner of the Department of Housing and Community Development, and must have substantial knowledge of property tax collection processes. Part of the duties in this role, as you all already know, is to assist homeowners to understand the process for collection of delinquent taxes, to actively assist the homeowners to apply for tax credits, discount programs, and other public benefits, and then refer homeowners to legal services, housing counseling, and other programs that will assist the homeowners with paying delinquent taxes to improve their financial situation. Also, one of the requirements is to maintain a website that functions as a clearinghouse for information concerning the process of collecting delinquent taxes, and also services and programs that are available to assist homeowners to pay for delinquent taxes to improve their financial situation. And so in this particular shop, we have the tax sale deferral program, in which we work with the Department of Finance. In this program, the city sets aside $2 million.
I'm sorry, Nicole. Can somebody switch the slide, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm multitasking over here. I'm sorry. Yeah, thank you. All right. Thank you on the assist. Yeah, that's the slide I'm on. So I'm under tax sale deferral program. So with the Department of Finance, the city sets aside $2 million annually for this program, and it is open to have homeowners removed from tax sale when the 2 million is exhausted. And so who's eligible? The assessed value of the home is $250,000 or less. It must be the primary residence, and the homeowner must have lived there for at least 15 years. At least one of the following criteria needs to be met, and it's that the total annual household earned income is $36,000 or less. The homeowner is at least 65 years old and has an annual earned income of $75,000 or less. Or the homeowner is an adult currently receiving disability benefits from federal disability programs or SSI, supplemental security income, and has an annual earned income of $75,000 or less. So just in regards to this program in particular, in FY25, we had 268 people apply for the program. We actually removed 110 homes in FY25, which came to about $1.1 million. Currently in FY26, and this was as of yesterday, we had about 228 applications in the portal. And then we had 44 still under review, 28 pending removal, and 22 had been officially removed. But in regards to adding up what the taxes owed on all of those properties, it comes to about $657,969,000. So that's what we're looking at for FY26, because the portal is actually closed. The portal closed on May 15th. I'm sorry, April 15th. I don't know how I got to May already. So also in this shop, we have the legacy homeowner pilot. You all heard about this in State of the City. It is slated to open up July 1, FY27. So we're anticipating the $2 million that has been set aside in the upcoming budget for this particular program. And so we're still fleshing out the portal that will actually operate for this particular program. But persons were directed to apply to the tax sale deferral portal so that we can have the pool of people that will qualify for this program. We did get an extension for people to get on, to get in the process, to get on the list for the legacy homeowner pilot, and that was extended to May 30th. For this particular program. So just to go over what the requirements are gonna be for that program, the applicants must be at least 65 years of age. They must be a resident of their property for at least 10 years. And they must have a household income that is less than $73,000. And the property must be valued at $250,000 or less. All of the other details are still in the works, but we are set to launch that July 1 to be able, and so the difference between the tax sale deferral program, that just takes them off the list. This legacy homeowners pilot program will actually assist with paying the debt so that we can zero out the debt that has been, because some of these people are, have been consistent over the years of being removed. And so we want to help them pay the debt and remove them from the, help them pay the bill, basically. Also in this program, we're working with the Mayor's Office of Community Affairs to do advertising and outreach on the homestead tax credit, the homeowner tax credit, and we do offer application assistance in this shop. So, even by way of what is dictated in the charter for the tax sale ombudsman, this office will assist persons who need help actually processing their application, the state application for that. We have created a partnership with the tax sale program, the state tax sale ombudsman's office. And so we are able to communicate back and forth to be able to get homeowners that homestead tax credit, which is important. The state is really particular about how the ID and how all the documents have to be. And so what we also find a lot of times just throughout my shop in general is that when we pull up as that, people don't understand that there is not marked as their primary residence. And so that is the mechanism to help to assist in them to get that marked as their primary residence and then to get that tax credit. Also, in FY '27, we anticipate launching the heirs property registry. This is something that we had anticipated launching sooner, but as the legacy homeowner pilot came into play, we slated both launches for the beginning of fiscal year '27. And so with the heirs property registry, we've been working with the tax sale work group to be able to get this particular tool set up. This has, been mandated by the state. And like I said, we're sharing, what we're doing here. Actually, Baltimore City is the first to actually, entertain this and, work to have it set up. And so with this, if a property belongs to a family member who's passed away, the property was not transferred through a will or through a formal process, the family members are able to register that property so that it's identified that there are potential heirs to that property, and so that is marked just to be able to continue generational wealth, and we ensure that the house stays in the family. Multiple family members, we do identify that multiple family members may have a claim or shared interest in properties, and some of them actually live in the home or have a connection to it, and the property must be in Baltimore City. And so this will also help us across even our home repair programs where we have some of these heirs living in properties that are in need of assistance in our other programs. And we're able to help them work through the process and also connect them with the nonprofit partners to be able to get through the process. In the meeting just yesterday when we met with the state, they're launching the second phase of this in their shop where there will be money available to be able to help these families with legal fees to be able to do the transfers of the deeds. So where am I on the slide? And then, like I said, we have collaborations. We work with the Mayor's Office of Community Affairs. We work with the Mayor's Office of Older Adults, the SOS Fund, and the Tax Sale Work Group in this department. Next slide, please. All right, and just so now to discuss some of our homeowner and resident protections that we have in place. Next slide, please. So traditionally, our Office of Rehabilitation, which is for homeowners only. We have our lead hazard reduction program, which is open to homeowners and renters. We have our weatherization program that is available to homeowners and renters. And then we have our HUBs nonprofit partners, and they service only homeowners over age 65. And so just to talk about some of the funding that we have allotted to our repair programs, in FY26, we had over $6 million in capital funding for home repairs. We had $9.95 million granted by HUD for our lead hazard remediation to be spent between 2025 and 2030. And then we have over $5.7 million granted by state DHCD for weatherization services to be spent between 2025 and then 2028. And so just to talk a little bit about where we are with the home repair programs, starting with the Office of Rehabilitation Services. In FY25, we did 271 cases. In FY26, to date, we're already at 257. Our average case is about $37,500. In FY26, we tried for the first time when going through Code Blue and no heat season, we launched a no heat pipeline during that time, during Code Blue, and we were able to complete 34 cases. What was unique about the no heat pilot, we changed what our 311 looks like, so we did that on the front end so that people who were experiencing no heat, we would capture all of those persons, and actually we streamlined the process to complete HVAC unit repairs and replacements. And this happened between November 1 and March 31st. And so it was just an expedited process where we were able to do the initial vetting of the application through the light intake and assessment unit. And then it went immediately straight to the contractor. So because we knew that they were no heats, we eliminated some of the other processes in the middle that we would do for other services, and we were able to expedite them to some of our kind of familiar contractors. And so that was the pipeline, and we were able to do them. And so they were approved to complete the installation up to $18,000, and that helped expedite those no heats during that process. There are limitations to that model, just because of the funding, because we have to use flexible funding for that. We can't use the traditional CDBG funding that takes some extra work to be able to get the homeowner to qualify. Some of the client's repair needs exceeded just the no heat. And so, we were able to complete what we could, but then they still had to go back to the waiting list for the other repairs. But it solved the initial problem of getting people heat during the cold blue season. As far as the weatherization program is concerned, just so that everybody understands their pipeline, they are required to prioritize no heat referrals, but they have to prioritize the ones that are certified and provided by state DHCD. So that dictates their pipeline. So we do the intake on the light end, but we still have to send it off to the state to be certified, and then it comes back our way, because that's how the state process works. So the bulk of constituents that are served for no heat come through our Office of Rehabilitation Services. Next slide, please. Also, for renter and homeowner, I don't know what happened to the presentation. You can skip through. Yeah, skip through. Yep, skip through. Next. Go, yeah. Next one. There we go. All right. So just to talk about the Office of Integrated Client Services, we have the Office of the Ombudsman. They do the landlord-tenant mediation. They also assist with tenant relocation. We assist code enforcement with vacates and resident relocation. And then we also, in FY27, we'll be working with the state to do outreach on homeowners insurance and renters insurance. Because what we know through our Office of Crisis Services, we often, and even in our Office of Rehabilitation Services, there are many homeowners and renters throughout the city of Baltimore without the proper insurances that they rely on city services when they don't have the appropriate insurance for the properties that they reside in. Then we have, like I said, crisis services, which have become a first responder for incidents of emergency displacement for housed residents. And that's what's important to lift up. That's different in this population. These are persons that were housed right now, and then within a blink of an eye, they become unhoused due to whatever the catastrophic incident is. And then we also offer emergency relocation assistance, and then we still continue to work with the family to get them to some point of stabilization if they don't have a pathway for that on their own. So in FY25 was when we actually reimagined what the Office of the Ombudsman looked like, and they started their response back through the CAD paging with the fire department and OEM. And so FY20, because it was late FY25, they had about 78 CAD paging incidents. FY26 to date, and this was as of yesterday, they had 266 CAD paging incidents just as of 2 days ago. Next slide, please. Also, in this department, we have two mechanisms to be able to offer some assistance. We've talked about crisis services, relocation. And so we have what was lifted up, the Emergency Mortgage and Homeowner Assistance Program. Initially, it was set to help homeowners. And so when it first launched, it was specifically for homeowners because during COVID, we know that we had renters assistance, but there was no assistance initially in place to help persons with mortgage. We did work with the state during that time when the state launched their program. And so, we collaboratively worked to assist homeowners. When we realized that there was some extra CV3, and that's that COVID relief funding available, we did a change in who we could help, and we expanded it to renters. And then because we were already doing utility, BG&E fell under that utility. So we're able to work with like, the rest of our partners, MOCFS, MOHS, MOED. We get referrals from the Office of Older Adults often, MOCA and MONSE, to be able to assist persons that kind of fall in the gap of the other programs that have run out of money. And so just so that we're aware, we've been using, like I said, leftover CDBG CV3 funding available. Right now, we do have funding available that we are partnering with all of these agencies internally to take their referrals to spend down the last of the CV1 money for the MHAT program. Also, what we had set up, and this was under the prior leadership, and I believe it was FY23, part of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund was the HOPE program, and that's the Helping Other People Excel. That is an internal program to DHCD and other DHCD agencies and our nonprofit partners. So the way that this program is set up to work, like for instance, in working with MOED, we're helping people who are newly getting jobs and they need to move across town or they need rent supports or things like that. Traditionally, we work with MONSE. I can remember when we had the shooting at Edmondson High School and that one of the families needed to be relocated. We're able to work with MONSE to help people get relocated for whatever the incident is. So we work internally with that. The cap with that is that the residents have to be below 30% AMI. So it's limited who we can help with this program. And it has some dollar caps to it as well. But we are able to offer some support to be able to do our relocation assistance through these two mechanisms so far. So, it's working. Next slide, please. So just to talk about some of the equitable home ownership strategies that we have at DHCD. So we have all of our homeowner incentives. So we have the Baltimore City. Some are 5,000, some are 10,000 because we did have some special initiatives. We still have our Buying into Baltimore Trolley Tour, which is the 5,000. Our first-time home buyer, we actually changed how we did this program last fiscal year, FY25. So we're able to actually, with first-time home buyers, we're actually able to help them with more money now than we could in the past. This is the only, first-time home buyers is the only one who has an income limit. So this is for persons who are 80% or below of AMI. This is funded by CDBG. They could potentially, it's a calculation, but potentially they could receive 50% of their required down payment, but the new model gives them gap funding to really reduce the loan balance, and they can buy down their interest rate up to 2.5%. and get an additional $5,000 bonus under certain circumstances. We also have the Live Near Your Work. That's a city match with like our anchor institutions. The anchor institution provides a Live Near Your Work incentive, and then the city will match $1,000 to $2,500 of that. We have our Vacants to Value Booster. So if a house has had a VBN for at least a year, persons could qualify for the $10,000. And then we also work with Live Baltimore with the Buy Back the Block program, which has been successful, and it'll be funded, and it's to be funded in the FY27 budget. We do have a partnership with the Housing Authority of Baltimore City. They have a pipeline of constituents who move from living in the HABC properties, that they move to home ownership. And so we work with them so that they're able to qualify for our incentives. One thing that's special about our incentives is that they're potentially stackable. Next slide, please. Thank you. We've had our low-income mortgage program in the budget for some years, but we're finally ready to launch this program. We're still working with some with our documents and legal to be able to get it to launch FY27, but we are in the recruitment phase for the mortgage underwriter, which was a key piece for our low-income mortgage program. With this program, it was designed to assist buyers who may not qualify for a traditional mortgage, and it is designated for properties that are $150,000 or less, because traditionally those properties would be hard to get a mortgage on. And so there's some specific eligibility requirements, 30% AMI. So these are the non-traditional buyers and persons that have would have problems getting a traditional mortgage. And so these are single-family homes intended to be the primary residence. The buyer must reside in the property for at least 7 years. And they can still qualify for the down payment incentives that I just previously discussed. But like I said, we're still going through working with legal to get all of the documents and everything situated. And we're bringing on our mortgage underwriter so that we can launch this program. And so we do have CDBG funds that are identified to support this particular program. One of the last things I believe that I have, next slide, please. Oh, go back. Go back, on. Can you go back? Go to the last slide before thank you. It should say 3, protecting us. So one of the things that we worked on with, and we started April of last year, we got a fellow from the FUSE program, and our fellow has worked on a project called Protect the Nest. That's the name of it, and it's basically to support renters who want to transition into home ownership. And the way that the program is designed, it's much more than just regular home ownership, the home ownership course that you have to go to buy a house. This is a model that's built out to have renters, do their pre-purchase readiness and then the post-purchase implementation. So it's the curriculum is set to do, to cover financial literacy, property upkeep, just civic engagement, how to be a good neighbor, and then wealth building strategies to increase the wealth of the renter, and just, and also working with the legacy homeowners and how, that relationship matters, and to become community leaders and part of the neighborhood where they intend on buying. And so it develops a model that has, that impacts renters, like I said, transitioning from home ownership into their neighborhoods. And so where we are right now in this particular process, we have stakeholder work groups, and they actually meet on Thursday. And so they're regularly meeting to build out what this cohort looks like. The work group consists of persons who are potentially interested in becoming homeowners. We are working with financial, with lenders. And so it's, the work group is a variety of people who are helping to build this out. So where we're stuck with this is that we know what our estimated costs would be to launch the program. And so it depends on how much we want to scale up from the beginning. So it's estimated just to be able to launch our first year somewhere between $555,000 to 1.28, depending on how big of a cohort we want to have for this particular program. And just another note, because I know we just talked about the TIF, we're actually engaging the TIF developers, the big TIF developers, so because we know what the affordability is for those houses, and this program is set to, to help people who are transitioning from renters that are potentially in that 60% AMI. And they're also, like I said, legacy city residents who want to transition into home ownership. So we're actually gaining information right now from the TIF developers, and the goal is so that, when we build these cohorts out, that, we can target these properties for purchase, because we already know that the purchase, that the buyer has to be at that 60% or below of AMI. And I believe that is the last thing that I have on the slide. So I'm just open to any questions you may have.
Thank you, DC Hart. So my first question, and now after hearing this, I think HABC should be here. One of the biggest untapped potential that we've had in terms of attracting renters is working with HABC on the counseling that you're discussing. because they have an untapped market in the amount of vouchers that have been ported to Baltimore County, Howard County, Anne Arundel County, and Hartford County that could be cashed in for at least $30,000 in down payments towards homes in Baltimore City who are our former residents. And I'm just gonna say what my values are. My values are is that as we build Baltimore back up, we need to track back those Black residents that we displaced in the 90s and the 2000s with everything that we've done, right? And if we know that we ported people out with these vouchers, I think we can port them back if we have the mortgage program that you have, as well as coupled with the counseling and the right amount of connection. Because, and then just to be transparent with my background, I lived in public housing until I was 25. From Latrobe Homes to living in 21st Street in Barclay and using a voucher, living with my grandmother, and got a bachelor's and a master's degree. I think as we're looking at these people who have been ported to these other counties, they don't get the same support that they get that we have, that they get there. And it's an untapped potential because, I hate to say this, even from the most recent housing legislation that we had, it didn't appear to be helpful for Black people who lived here. And just based off of the survey from Live Baltimore, Black people want to own some stuff. And if we know that the people that we know wanted to own property have now been ported somewhere else with vouchers, why not bring them back, right? That's a market. We have proof positive in my district, in Reservoir Square. We attracted Black residents back to West Baltimore with quality housing. Now we're getting a grocery store right next door to that housing. We can do it, but I just want to make sure that we're lifting not only that program, but giving you the supports for it. And I'm going to make a request to the administration to have HABC here, because I think that's where the disconnect is. And this is the biggest issue I have since we separated HABC and DCHD as an agency. Those small connections are not there as much anymore. Because if they have bodies that can pay for this program and we can get more residents through that pipeline, then that's a funding source we don't have to go anywhere to look for or beg for philanthropy. Especially if we know that X number of persons and the federal government is paying for these type of programs through HUD right now. So just want to call it full circle. The other thing is, thank you for the loan process. It is a question I raised 4 years ago when reading the charter that the Housing Commissioner has the ability to actually create a mortgage. And we have this disconnect in terms of how we're doing housing, and we're not looking to incorporate people who make $15 to $20 an hour. And I say this all the time when we think about what happened in Bed-Stuy and Washington, D.C. Those people who were on the means at a low income got displaced real fast to the suburbs because they couldn't afford to stay. And if we're doing whole blocks and creating markets, we can create a market so that that mortgage makes sense in a West Baltimore, or Southeast Baltimore, or Northeast Baltimore. So just want to put a pin in it. It's late. I don't want to go deep into it, but I think that we should have a meeting to discuss how that looks and work together on how we pilot that, how that looks, because that is what I think is the next level for doing it right and equitably. I'll go to Vice Chair Ramos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate all of this. I had a question. On the list of Office of Tax Sale Prevention and Community Affairs, I realize that you're owning these, but you got to add payment plans in here.
Well, that's actually finance.
I
which is
know,
why
but
I
you
didn't
all are
include
part
it.
of the getting the interest forms and working with everybody to.
So the only requirement we have is to list it on our website. So the interest forms go to finance. They don't come to us.
Yeah, but wouldn't it be one of the things that you can say when you're working with residents who
Oh, absolutely.
may have challenges with paying, say, hey, here's the payment plan?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, because that's how I see this list, is not
Right,
just the ones that are in there, but.
Actually, in this department, we have social service coordinators that work in this department. They work differently than Light, but in this particular shop, so they're looking at the resident holistically. So whatever their tax sale concern is that they're coming with, we're looking at strategies across the board. So it could be a payment plan, it could be MHAT. Like we're gonna figure it out so that the goal is to help them clear the balance. Just like we know that the legacy homeowner pilot is coming into play FY27, But if you're not 65, you don't qualify. But we have a pool of people who are younger than 65 that need the help. So we look at all of our residents holistically to see where they fit in any of these particular models, because the goal is, one, to actually help them not only clear the balance, but to ensure that they can continue paying. And so what I know finance is working through is the next iteration, and I could probably let Director Moxton speak
Oh, I know
to
all about it, don't you worry, you don't need to.
Being able to set up the payment plan moving forward. And I know that came up in the hearing last week, because I believe it was Councilman Slifer that asked the question of, so realistically, if a person wanted to, they could pay in increments, like nothing is stopping them from doing that. But we know that with a payment plan, it sets up an intentional budget mechanism so that people are able to budget to be able to pay their taxes on time. But the key thing is that we see is to help them clear that balance, because until we help them clear that balance, a payment plan is kind of setting the person up to failure if you're not helping, especially when there's large balances.
No, I agree. I mean, we want to, it's one of many tools. I totally agree with you. And, because a lot of our residents should be applying for the homeowner's property tax credit, and that is the solution as opposed to a payment plan, or you reduce it enough and then you have the payment plan. So it has to be coupled with all of the different things. I'm just very proud of it, so you just need to.
and that's our approach, to look at all of the tools in the toolbox.
Right, exactly.
And throw everyone at each particular property that makes sense.
Right. Yep. And then the legacy homeowner pilot, I thought that was happening this year.
No, it's supposed to start July 1.
No.
So we're actually taking the names. So they are applying to the tax sale deferral portal. So they're actually getting on like a list. And then those people, the money actually starts flowing July 1, if that makes sense. But we're taking the names
I thought we
now.
were taking them out of tax sale this year.
So we're taking them out of tax sale, but when I'm talking about July 1, it's actually paying the debt. They're two different things. So right now, they're getting on the list. They're gonna come out of the tax sale this year, but we're paying the debt when the money
new
becomes
fiscal year is
available
what
in
you're
the new
saying.
budget.
Yeah. So I have a lot of thoughts about this that I've laid out in a very detailed email to
I've
everybody,
seen it.
because I think that, $2 million is not enough, first of all. Second of all, we have a whole pool of people that we could have just gone to that we had been pulling out of tax sale already and just, worked with them on
So
that.
those people are gonna be on that list. So everybody that met the requirements, the 65 years of age, the income requirements that are already on that list for FY '26 tax sale deferral will automatically be qualified for the parameters of the legacy homeowner pilot.
So I guess I wondered why, initially when it was announced, it was like, hurry up, get your application in because the portal's gonna close in
So originally,
April.
because the tax sale deferral portal closed May 15th.
April.
April 15th. I keep
That's
saying
okay.
April 15th.
It's
I don't know
okay.
why I have May 15th in my head, April the 15th. And so we did work to get that extension until May 30th because it was supposed to go along with the deferral timeline. But we gave the extension understanding that we didn't have enough time for outreach and to give people more
Yeah,
time
we
to
definitely
get on
didn't
the
have
list.
time for outreach, so I appreciate that. And then we are identifying who those folks are and working with them so that they're not in the same situation from before.
And just to be clear, we're looking in our shop, we're looking at everybody who applied, right? Because we know that some people got denied because they didn't meet the qualifications of the tax sale deferral program. So again, when I say we use all of our strategies, so even if they got denied, they may qualify for MHAP, right? So we would use the MHAP tool for those people who got denied. So we have different strategies outside of that.
Right.
So I just want you to understand, want you to know that we look at holistically everybody that's in that portal to figure out a strategy for everybody. Even though this particular program is lifted up with some new funding, we have some other tools in our toolbox to be able to potentially help everybody on the list if they qualify.
Well, there was also some confusion initially because the tax sale deferral program application said, this is not debt relief. And then what we're actually saying is that this is debt relief, not
So
the tax.
we did edit our portal.
You did
once
edit the whole
once this
thing?
was
Okay,
launched.
good. Because that was part of the
we edited.
confusion.
Yeah, we edited the language on the portal.
Yeah, I mean, all of this was kind of thrown together at the last minute, but or it seems like it, I don't know if it was, but it seems. And so I want to make sure that, you know, we're able to communicate well that this is happening. And it's something that we've talked about initially, you know, through the tax sale reform work is like, at some point, we're going to have to just pay it off and start new with some of these folks that are our repeaters. So I think that's, so I'm glad that the deadline was open. You know, making sure that the comms comes out for us to be able to continue to get people in will be helpful because we were all working on the April timeline. This is the first that I'm hearing of the May timeline, so if we can get that.
Yeah, and we'll make sure that you get flyers. We have at least 3 outreach events coming up targeted to older adults. I know we're having one at Chick Webb. We have about, I know at least 3 off the top of my head coming up. So we'll make sure your office, if you've not already gotten the information, we'll make sure everybody council office has the information when those flyers come out so that you all are aware, so that you all can direct older adults to those outreach events.
Yeah.
We had our first one, not last Friday at Waxter Center. So we've started the process of actually having, you know, in the community events to be able to assist persons.
Well, and then there's a lot of the partners that also have events. All of us have senior events in our districts at some point during the year. As you know, you've all been to mine. So, you know, we want to make sure that those happen. I've got a couple more questions, I think.
Yeah, I just have a direct follow-up. Who sent that out? Because I didn't know about it and a few other council members didn't know about it.
What, the May 30th?
Yeah.
We're hearing about that right now today.
But also, so I have questions related to like just general like communication and outreach. This goes back to this conversation from when we first had our first oversight hearing. You guys do good work, but nobody knows that you do good work. and I hate to say this in a politest way. I think it's a disservice because it takes a lot to do what you do, right? And I don't know if you need to get out there with like a mic on Instagram or something on every news channel, but the work that you do is good work. And I hate to say this, it's shooting yourself in the foot because no one knows that you do it and everyone hates you because they don't know that you do it. And then when I say that they have this thing, like you really have this thing in this agency that they do this. And I think that I feel for you because I can say Nicole Hart and her team and we just send it over there and then we're like, oh, this person knows this is gonna happen, right? But I don't know if the silos in your agency is allowing you to do it because, how can I say this in the kindest way? I've had code enforcement through Booker refer people to you, but I've had SEIU that I know that they dang sure should refer somebody to you, but still this person ended up with citations and violations, but they never referred that person to you. And it's just the fact that I think this communication thing is both 360. If you don't know it in your own agency, how can we communicate it to the rest of the world that you have this thing? And I just want to put a pin there and just say that like, that's something I think that we should work on because a lot of what you said tonight is a lot of what we've been asking for years.
That's a fact.
And it's coming to fruition. And if we were hounding you in those late nights and budget hearings, use us as an amplifying voice. I think just across my social media the last month, we reached over 15,000 people, right? In targeted messaging. I know she does a video every 90 seconds of the day, right? Jermaine is starting to do videos as well. If you inform us with the information, we can amplify that sound and collectively help you, right? When your staff gave my staff a small little mini training on how to collect documents for the light program, that was extremely helpful for us because we were able to help your office. You got the documents that you needed.
Right.
I'm just thinking that we need a force multiplier. And I appreciate you, but I think we need to have that conversation about how to force multiply your communications and outreach.
And so just the FYI, for the legacy homeowner tax pilot, MOCA is actually leading the outreach and the information for that. But I will make sure that you all are looped into that.
Yeah, I mean, as the chair said, we're your partners. So we want to help our residents as well. So I think that's really, really important. Can I ask another question? When we come to the hearings next time, it would be helpful to have, particularly for the tax sale office, the number of people that you're serving. So I don't know how many people have been helped by the team in terms of all of these things and what those outcomes are. So that there would be this sort of who's in the intake, and then, if we've been able to hear, to help people. I mean, I think that we want to really be able to see that and then see that grow or shrink depending on what's happening. Obviously, the more people we help, then eventually we get there.
Yep, and I have those numbers if you want them.
Yeah, can you talk about that a little bit? Like how many people you serve?
For tax sale deferral, FY '22, we had 266 applications. We removed 115 homes at an amount of $736,850.
Yeah, you said that earlier. I mean,
No.
I'm sorry.
I'm talking about collectively. So for FY '22, we had like I said, 200. So are you asking for the number of people we removed?
What I'm asking for, and thanks for letting me clarify, is, so we've removed the 220 people.
Mm-hmm.
We've been working with them, right, to get to all of these other resources to make sure that they're.
I'm speaking to FY '26 when I say because we just have these new tools as of FY '26. For FY '22, '23, '24, '25, I would just be able to give you the number of people that applied and then the number of people who were removed. I can potentially cross-reference them with our other programs to see if they went on to qualify and actually get the assistance. So we can do that, but that would, I have to work with the data team to do some analysis to cross the portals to see if some of these people who were removed actually got financial assistance. But when I speak to the revamping of the shop and to look at it from the holistic approach, that applies to FY '20.
I see what you're saying, okay. But we can expect that data moving forward because you're tracking it a little bit better now.
Absolutely.
In terms of, okay, well, I appreciate that clarity. I have a couple more questions, but I can yield to another colleague.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question in regards to, you mentioned in regards to the tax sale deferral program, you mentioned that, maybe about like $1 million was the amount. I guess my question, I'm not sure how far back, like as of last year, it didn't look like we reached the 2 million mark. Has there been conversations on lowering the threshold so that more people can qualify? Has that ever been a thought? Because it doesn't seem like we've reached the maximum amount.
Lowering what, I'm confused.
Or
with your
just the
question.
qualification, just the requirements. Because it seems like we never reached the max in some sense of people who, of the allotted amount each year. Have we ever in the past? And if we never, has there ever been thought on like adjusting it so more people can qualify if we never reach the benchmark?
I probably would have to punt that question to Director Moxton for finance.
Well, we are absolutely going to evaluate the performance of the program. So I think that it's on the table. We're looking to reach as many people as we can. We're kind of getting data in real time. So yes, it's something we'd consider.
Okay, thank you, because if we have available to go up to $2 million, but every year we never reach it, that's the reason why. Thanks. Yep. Okay.
I just have a follow-up. Why aren't we doing targeted outreach? We know that Ms. Johnson has appeared on this list 6 times. How do we I'm sorry. Let's go, and I'm trying to get out of here to put my kids to bed, but I just want to be transparent with you. This reminds me of the conversation that we have every year about grass cutting. I know every vacant in my district that you got to cut the grass for every year, right? If I know that Ms. Johnson is reoccurring on the tax sale list, she has subsequently qualified for it, why aren't I directly reaching out to her ahead of time, like, hey, I know you qualify?
So I will tell you that in working with MOCA for the past couple of weeks on the pilot, we have done, all of that data analysis was done to see who, like you said, the frequent flyers are, to know who has been removed every month, to know who we need to target. And so we're gonna actually do some targeted outreach, some mailers, events in the community and all of those kind of things, because you're right, we do know who, we've done the analysis. So that was done on the front end to kind of figure out what outreach needed to happen. But like I said, MOCA is leading that. So again, it's, they're not in the room to give you the specifics, but I do know that the data analysis was done because I've seen it. And so that data is available. So we've identified a lot of those people off, that had the final bill and legal notice.
No, I'm just, oh Lord. Yeah, so if you've gone through it 6 times, there's the list. It's not a bad universe, right? We already know what the universe is. The question is, and this is going down to the case management side, because MOCA doesn't have the capacity to do the case management, right? So
I can't hear you.
MOCA doesn't have the capacity to do the case management. I'll give you an example. So this past summer, I had a senior resource fair in Robert Coleman. We reached out to 600 residents. In that, we received over 200. Of that 200, we had 50 cases that we could take because we literally, this is through Senior Legal Services, the Maryland Volunteers Lawyers, this is everybody else at SOS Fund. We're all in this room, we're looking at the case management and how we can help people. And what I found was that there's levels, there's people who have bad title issues because they got a deed that still got their dead husband on it or someone else's dead body on it. It's just there, right? Then there's, I'm just being transparent, right? Or there's I have a lot of people in my district where we've demolished things through offices and we hit them with a lien and they're like, but it wasn't my fault, right? That's those people. Then there's the other people who did not know through our own portal that if I got fines and citations, I'm supposed to go to the miscellaneous portion of the city's website to pay my fines and citations until I get the interest form, right? This is a lot of educational pieces. So we literally had sit there and it's like a couple of those people we got out of tax sale because we literally sat there and said, did you go to the miscellaneous tab to see if you owed any money to the city? They then went in there and I said, well, you should pay $50 to get you under the cap until we can figure out how to get the rest of this bill paid off of. But you're now at $700, not $750 and qualifying for tax sale. It's just, but that takes a level of detail. MOCA doesn't have that time. And it took me 6 weeks with direct mailing, door knocking and canvassing, and then having lawyers call these people ahead of time to then problem solve right here and then have the resources there. It took a team of 12 of us to plan that out and be able and available to that. And then on top of that, we had to get consent for most of it. And then we had to budget to a point where we had to, because the clerk's office charges for copies of deeds, had to budget for a copy of the deed now. These are all things I think that I would like to hear more about what MOCA is doing, but I think that this is one of those things where we have to use our partners in the nonprofit community that we've been using that have the expertise, because why reinvent the wheel if we as a city could house, I go back to when I did a lot of work with Out for Justice. We knew a lot of people with criminal records who worked on the day had no time to come and get an expungement. So people like me would sit outside from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. all night and expunging records that entire time because we knew that we would be able to touch 400 or 500 members of the community that way. I think we have to think creatively, like if we even have to do it at a late night fair and like bring your documents, we'll help you figure it out. I just think we need to think differently because there's triaging that needs to take place, and you don't have a team to do it.
I do.
I mean, for the volume that we need. I'm just being transparent. I mean, Noah built the ark. I don't think we have enough ark to help a lot of people in this moment. Sorry, I'm sleepy. So I think that we need to have those type of conversations about how we do force multiplying because this is good work.
And just to follow up on that, Mr. Chair, we know that, once somebody comes in for a service, that there's so many other things. So I'm glad that you're thinking that way. But there's also nonprofits that have been doing that for a really long time.
And we work with
so
them.
there has to be, so I agree with Mr. Chair that MOCA might do the outreach, but if somebody knows that they need something, they can refer to your office. But sometimes people are ready like today.
Let me
to file
clarify.
those.
When I
Yeah.
said MOCA was doing the outreach, I meant specifically for the legacy homeowner pilot, not for the rest of my programs.
No, I
I meant
understand that.
specifically for this particular pilot because that's who's been designated. So that's who we're working with for the launch of that.
Right, so they're going to the resource fairs,
Well, all of us are going.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think.
We're working with the mayor's office of older adults, so Andoria is on the team. So it's a team of people, but MOCA is the lead.
Right,
So
I
we're all participating, we're all gonna be at the events. My team is gonna be set up to help people in real time. They're gonna, the flyer may not have gone out yet. I'm just thinking, because I know I saw it today. But the way that we did the event at the Waxter Center, we are encouraging people to bring their documents to come in. My tax sale deferral team is there in real time to be able to help people with their issues. So we do an audit of their documents, find out what they need, what we need to assist them with. So we're doing that in real time at these outreach events that are happening and that have happened.
Well, and I appreciate that. I mean, I think the councilman has probably done the same thing that I have done, which is actually sit in people's living rooms with their documents.
And we're
with
available
the
to and we're
families.
available to do home visits if necessary.
Yeah,
as
but
well.
I mean, I think
just
we
in
have that-
collaboration and
but we have-
partnership,
what-
we're
what-
available.
What I think we're both saying is, we have the addresses of the 2,000 people that have been pulled out of tax sale. Those are the 2,000 people that we should be going to their doors and saying, hey, we can do this, we can do that, we can do that. I mean, that we have the list. They are our repeaters. And, those are the people that we should be starting with on all of these things. And that's where the partnerships come in because, they'll open the door for me. They'll open the door for some of our nonprofits. Like, that's the list.
And I agree with you on that. I think it's easier for us to use the force multipliers because I had to learn through this process for even qualifying for the homeowner's tax credit. I had a senior who had to sign over the ownership of her life insurance because of the cash value put her over the cap for income. Just so that she qualified for a tax credit that will take her tax bill in my neighborhood from $8,000 a year down to $1,200, and the state will fill in the gap. But she had to sign over, she had a $500,000 policy with a cash value that she's been paying on for a long time, right? So you can only imagine what the cash value is on that, and she's in her 90s. And I think I think there's ways that we can do it and do it well if we have buildings, we have space, we have printers, we have these things. If we only ask these people to bring their bodies and their expertise and their time and their talent, I think that's where we need to start thinking because your team and MOCA can't do it all. Ms. Ondorian and her team can't do it all. But if we know 3 times a year, we trying to attract over 500 residents in each one of these events, we know the capacity. And I think the councilwoman and I are trying to say, how can we be innovative, right? And do it differently because it's hard, and I say this as someone who sat in all your seats for being in agencies. It's hard when someone's asking you to do something differently when you know you got the capacity of today. And it's hard. I'm just being transparent with you.
Absolutely. I just want to add that we are going to absolutely take you up on this offer. We welcome the partnership. You're absolutely right about the force multipliers. We've talked about the toolkit. There are tools in the toolkit that are incredibly new, and we're all figuring out how to use them together. That includes payment plans. That includes this legacy homeowner program. Somebody could ask, why didn't we just wait longer to roll this out? Because people need help now, and that's why we rolled one of these programs out as a pilot so that we can begin helping people as we gather information. I think you're absolutely right about some of these lists existing already. The 2,000 folks we've pulled out of tax sale, that was the starting point on the data side. We then began filtering it for other information we have on people. You're absolutely right that the work of sitting in someone's living room is not necessarily something that exists as our current capacity, although we're building that capacity, but we will take you up on that partnership offer because this is a really critical moment when resources that have been really hard to get for a long time are finally appearing to solve these longstanding problems. And these brand new toolkits, we want to get the word out as much as we can.
Shout out to my crisis services team. They're great. Thank you all for everything you do. It is a really hard job in the middle of the night, 2 a.m. We're there, the group is there, and we've heard really positive feedback from the fire department and from residents, so I'm really grateful to the entire team. I know it's a new team, and the way that we've conceptualized it is new, but it's working. It's working. So let us know what you need to make it even more amazing.
Pins.
Pins. I got you. Yeah, I understand. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for hosting the hearing, and I think this was very productive. Thank you.
With that being said, we're in recess.
Thank you.